Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto's Uzumaki genetics were enhanced by Kurama. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
With a sparkle in his eye, Kakuzu said, "So, Gato, what job do you have for this time and how much are you going to pay me?" Gato knew exactly why Gato didn't like to call him. Taking off his glasses, Gato grunted and said, "I want you to kill some people for me." Kakazu's eyebrows shot up. "I assume these aren't your typical folks, you would simply have your thugs take care of them if they were." "You're correct, the problem is that they are being guarded by at least one A-rank shinobi and some genin." "I see, what are the typical rates?" Gato frowned and then nodded, saying, "You can keep the heads of the A-rank shinobi for 100 million yen, after you kill the people. I also want you to demolish the partially constructed bridge. I'll give you an additional 50 million yen if you do that." After being informed of their location and the ideal time to attack, Kakazu walked out of Gato's office, smiling behind his mask. He turned to face his partner, who had been sitting outside, and frowned. "So, will we be able to leave this place? I didn't even get to kill any damned people on the way here, and you fucking forced us to travel halfway across the nation." Kakazu simply gave his partner a stern look and told him to stop talking. "We are even, in my opinion, because I had to put up with your bitching the entire time. We recently got a job that involves killing people. They seem to have some ranks that I can deal with. Is it possible for you to manage some genin?" Hedan snarled, "Obviously, Jashin-sama will sacrifice them all." "All right, we're leaving in 4 hours." Around the corner, they failed to notice a tiny bug fly and dispel it. Returning to the present, the monsters would attack around dinner time, so Naruto had to return as quickly as possible through the forest. Every second was valuable, and they could use it to prepare. Naruto bounded out of the foliage and kicked down the door to Tazuna's house. "Kakashi-sensei. There are two very powerful men coming this way," with a terrified expression on his face, Naruto said. Naruto calmed down. "I'm sure they're not the—" Kakashi, who had been taken aback, calmed down a little. "Yes, they are. They both have enormous reserves of chakra, greater than yours," Naruto screamed. Stomping on the fallen door, one of them, named Kakuzu, had his head fully covered, and the other was Hedan, a man brandishing a huge red scythe. "Show me." Zabuza narrowed his eyes, remembering every name in the bingo book because he was a missing nin. He had to make sure that both of those were S-rank threats. Naruto sent chakra to his Sharingan and said, "Look at my eye, all of you." As he displayed his clone's memories in the form of a genjutsu, he saw a terrified expression on everyone's faces. "Hey Kakashi-sensei, what do we do? We can't possibly defeat those two men. One of them, perhaps, but not both," panicked Sakura said. "All right, first relax, we must have a strategy. They won't be here for a few hours," Kakashi remarked, mentally preparing a strategy. "We ought to keep them apart. I made sure to memorize every name in the bingo book," Zabuza said, adding that Kakazu posed a greater threat. "The man with the most experience is nearly a century old. We must remove him as soon as possible. Prepare for an ambush. We must divide them up if we are unable to, while the rest of you, Haku, and Kakashi's brats take Hedan. Kakashi and I will take Kakuzu. Based on my understanding, Kakuzu appeared to be the pair's brains. Naruto, spend the next hour producing as many explosive notes as you can," Kakashi said, nodding. "We will then set up traps all over the place. Do you and your family have a hiding place, Tazuna-san?" "Okay. Go there." Tazuna nodded. "Soon, this will be a battlefield. I want one of Naruto's clones to have their sensor as far out as possible so we can get ready while we are setting the traps. We'll hide once Kakuzu and his companion are sufficiently close, and Zabuza will use your Kirigakure no Jutsu to cover the area with a fog. First, try to eliminate Kakuzu. If that isn't possible, divide them up. We cannot take the chance of them cooperating." Hedan had the physique of a taijutsu fighter. "Based on what I could see, make sure to keep him at a distance when we part ways if we can't get them out all at once." Did everyone get it? After a round of nods, everyone left to go about their duties. As instructed by Kakashi, Naruto spent the next hour creating explosive tags. With the aid of his clones, he completed just over 100 of them. Naruto and his team then started trapping every area of the forest, using ninja wire, explosive notes, kunai, shuriken. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, as well as nearly all of their supplies to create escape routes so that they would be able to avoid Hedan in the event that they were unable to eliminate him during their initial ambush. The real question was whether or not their preparations would be sufficient, as Naruto's clone felt Hedan and Kakuzu enter his range and dispelled so that the original would know that a storm was approaching. In the woods alongside Hedan and Kakuzu. "Why the devil is it taking so long? Have we arrived yet?" No, I'll kill you if you ask me that again. Laughing, Hedan said. Ha, as if a godless heathen like you could kill a devoted follower of Jashin like me. I do have a god, Kakazu sighed. He is just green, fits in a suitcase and is actually real. Aneurysm appeared to be on Hedan's horizon. What was that, you motherfucking cocksucker? How dare you treat Jashin-sama with such disrespect? Hedan, stop talking, you're going to announce our arrival to everyone within 30 yards. Mist started to envelop them as they continued to walk, so, whether or not they are aware of our arrival is irrelevant. Nevertheless, I will offer them as sacrifices to Jashin-sama. It will require more time. I dislike wasting money because time is money. What a fucking jerk, and why is there so much goddamned mist? Hedan waved his arm in an attempt to remove it. We are going to a location close to a shore. Kakuzu's eyes narrowed as he heard something slicing through the air to his right. This mist is... Wait, mist. He grunted as a huge blade slammed into his right arm after hardening it with Doden. Domu, Earth Release, Earth Spear. The ground exploded beneath Hedan as he reached for his scythe, sending him flying. Squinting at his assailant, Kakuzu said, Zabuza, so the little rat sold us out. Pushing against Kakazu's arm, Zabuza remarked, I could say the same. Coming here by yourself still makes you a fool. An S-rank missing nin is what I am. All you are is an A rank. What gives you the impression that you can defeat me? Zabuza was pushed back by Kakuzu's words. Hey, who said I was alone? Kakuzu was surrounded by the sound of chirping birds as Zabuza finished speaking. Chidori, 1,000 birds. He turned his head around and saw 2 pairs of Sharingans as he felt 2 of his hearts being crushed and 2 arms extending from his chest. As the 2 arms were taken off his chest, leaving 2 holes, Kakazu coughed and collapsed to the ground. Dude. Hedan swore as he watched his partner fall to the ground. He heard the same chirping sound that had preceded Kakazu's death, and then he saw a silver-haired masked nin with a lightning-wrapped hand lunge at him before he could escape, but the trailing lightning nicked his throat, causing it to split open and sending shockwaves through Hedan's body. Well, that wasn't very dramatic. As he approached the trembling Hedan, Naruto said. Sasuke approached as well, shaking his hand to remove the blood. That was the plan. As he emerged from the forest, Haku remarked, these guys were pretty disappointing for S-rank opponents. Well, not everything can be a battle of epic po, Kakashi said, placing a hand on his headband and preparing to retract it. Futon. Atsugai, wind release, pressure damage. Naruto was the shinobi who reacted the quickest out of the 6. Just before the shockwave reached the other 5 shinobi, a golden aura radiated from him and encircled them, causing his eyes to shift from the Sharingan to his Mangekyo. After the attack was over, it was discovered to be the spectral torso of a golden-hued skeleton with 4 arms and a single horned head, while Haku was inside the Susanoo's rib cage beside Naruto. All 4 of its arms were encircling the other shinobi in protective wraps, protecting them from the jutsu. So this is what his Susanoo, he with the ability to help by all means, looks like, Sasuke said, observing Naruto in the middle of the skeleton's rib cage. Kakashi sighed with relief. All of them would have suffered severe injuries from that attack, if not died. Good job, Naruto. Thanks, Kakashi-sen. Naruto nodded, shielded by the ghostly skeleton's ribs. Naruto abruptly covered his mouth with his hand and started to cough up blood. His bright red hair started to turn white in streaks. Naruto's Susanoo vanished, and he fell to one knee, panting. What the devil? As his body started to feel cold, Naruto pondered. Your body isn't accustomed to the strain of using the Susanoo, so it began draining your life force in addition to your chakra. While you will be able to train yourself in the future, right now you need to rest. I'm sending you some of my chakra and I'm releasing the 4-pillar reverse consumption seal. Naruto gave the equivalent of a mental nod and sighed in relief as he felt a surge of warmth emanating from his abdomen. The rest of their small group gathered around Naruto and watched with morbid curiosity as Kakuzu got to his feet, black threads being used to patch the holes in his chest. Sakura placed them on Naruto's back after rushing through some hand seals as her hands started to glow green. Sakura said in a worried tone, Naruto, what was that? Are you okay? Naruto nodded while wiping the blood from his chin. Yeah, haha, just, give me a minute to rest. Kakashi placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder and shook his head. No, it's fine, just get your strength back. We already took one of them down and only got caught off guard by the other we show. That fucking stung, you goddamned prick. Everyone's eyes widened, except for Kakuzu. The lightning running through Hedan's body made the cut on his neck even more deadly. Kakashi muttered, how, as he saw Kakuzu shoot threads from his sleeves, which encircled Hedan and drew him in. It was almost as though Kakuzu hadn't just had two lightning-wrapped arms thrust through his chest when he said, "Well, maybe if you weren't such a retard you wouldn't have gotten hit." "Fuck you, Kakuzu." Kakuzu turned to Naruto's group as he stitched up Hedan's throat and channeled wind chakra through his body. Two of the four masks that were stitched onto Kakuzu's back were crushed when he removed his cloak as the masks started to swell and finally ripped off his back, which instantly repaired itself. He leaned over. Four beasts were created by the masks, each representing a distinct animal. The first was shaped like a demonic biped with a beak, the second resembled a demonic tiger. But its mask was smashed, the third had its mask crushed and resembled a distorted biped of some kind, the last was shaped like an odd, thin-winged, four-legged body. After their masks were crushed, the two beasts shivered and perished. Kakuzu thought, "The brats got my lightning and fire hearts." "Wah! What the hell is that?" Zabuza exclaimed, his eyes wide. Naruto gasped as he glared at the man who ought to have died, saying, "I don't know, but I know I hit his heart." With wide eyes, Sasuke turned to face Naruto and exclaimed, "What? I hit his heart too." "Wait, both of you are sure you hit a heart?" Kakashi said, squinting his eyes as he considered the dead beasts wearing shattered masks. His suspicion was confirmed when he got nods from both of his male students. "Then that means, it's not that one of you didn't hit his heart, it's just he has more than one heart." Zabuza grunted and directed more chakra into the mist to thicken it. "What do you mean, Kakashi?" he asked. "The two masks that were destroyed. See those two broken masks? Those were the things that Naruto and Sasuke hit. They both said that they hit a heart, so that must mean each mask has a heart in addition to Kakuzu's own." The eyes of all three Sharingan users widened as Kakuzu started to gather chakra. Another one of those jutsus was too strong for Naruto to block. As Sakura attempted to heal Naruto, Zabuza and Kakashi both charged forward, followed by Haku and Sasuke. Haku and Zabuza versus Hedan. With a sick smile on his face, Hedan stopped Zabuza. Zabuza grunted as the shaft of Hedan's scythe blocked his sword swing, which was aimed at Hedan's head. Hedan, who was at a standstill with Zabuza, was grinning sickly. "I look forward to sacrificing you to Jashin-sama." As several senbon flew out, piercing Hedan's arm, Zabuza's response was to kick the insane man back and vanish into the mist once more. Fuck. Kakashi versus Kakuzu. Kakashi had disrupted Kakuzu's jutsu by forming a Raikiri, lightning cutter. Kakashi cut the strings that Kakuzu threw at him with a kunai in his other hand while avoiding a compressed fireball that exploded violently. While practicing taijutsu with Kakuzu, Kakashi observed that he never saw any of Kakuzu's thread beasts. Kakashi saw two shadows pursuing a flash of dark blue in the trees as he ducked under an elbow strike. "I'll have to end this quickly because they're pursuing Sasuke." Kakashi leapt after the two shadows and kicked Kakuzu back into a cluster of explosive notes that exploded. After the explosion, smoke cleared. Kakuzu was found to be unharmed, save for a few minor burns. Every inch of his skin that was visible had turned black. "I would have been killed if I hadn't hardened myself at the last minute. They trapped this place beforehand," Kakuzu said, narrowing his eyes. "They were aware of our approach." Kakuzu took a moment to gather himself before jumping off after Kakashi. Masks of Sasuke versus Earth and Wind. Kakuzu's earth mask body slammed and toppled the tree he was standing on, causing Sasuke to leap off it. Sasuke ran through hand seals and ended up on Tiger after witnessing the wind mask start to shape chakra. As the wind mask launched a wind bullet, Kaden, Gokakyu, fire release, grand fireball, blew out a stream of fire. Sasuke's fire jutsu used the wind to boost its power. The trees were burned to a crisp as the jutsu's empowered fire swept over them. After protecting the wind mask, Sasuke saw the smoke clear and the earth mask emerge. The Uchiha were then lunged at by the earth mask. He remarked absently that the creature's skin had solidified. As he started to dodge the earth mask's attacks, Sasuke thought, "TCH, that thing is getting really annoying." His Sharingan allowed him to stay one step ahead of the strange creature. "The other creature will use its wind attacks to stop me if I try to take it out with my lightning jutsu. This one protects it if I attempt to use my fire jutsu to try to eliminate the other one." The creatures were simply cooperating too effectively. Idly, Sasuke pondered whether this was how Kakashi felt when he spared Naruto and himself. From his right, Sasuke heard a wind bullet. He twisted his body to dodge the compressed air bullet, but he was too slow to avoid the earth mask's body check, which caused him to smash through two trees. After the smoke cleared, Sasuke was seen to be largely unharmed. He was encircled by a purple aura and a ghostly rib cage. Sasuke stood up shakily, wiped the blood from his eyes, and dispelled his Susanoo. He looked at the beast that had tackled him and noticed that it appeared dazed after striking Susanoo's diamond-hard bones. I only manifested the ribcage and it ate up almost half of my chakra. No wonder Naruto looked so weak after manifesting the whole torso. The wind mask flew out of the trees, and Sasuke saw it when he saw it start to build chakra. He didn't see Kakashi rip out of the trees and charge into it, forcing a Raikiri, lightning cutter. Through the mask he crossed his arms because he didn't have enough chakra to form Susanoo again and he didn't have time to dodge. Kakashi landed in front of Sasuke in a defensive position after leaping off the air mask's dying corpse because of his Sharingan's capacity to see chakra. He observed that despite the boy's near complete lack of physical injuries, he was only at slightly less than 1/3 of his chakra. Kakashi narrowed his eyes and asked, "Sasuke, are you okay?" as he noticed Kakuzu emerge from the foliage as well, appearing to be in good condition save for a few minor burns. When Sasuke uncrossed his arms, he saw the broken remnants of the wind mask and his sensei. Yeah, they kept covering each other's weaknesses so I couldn't get a chance to take either of them out. Taki looked at the missing nin and saw that Kakuzu didn't appear to be in much worse shape. Aside from a few burn marks on his clothing, did the trap not work? Kakashi gave a headshake. No, the trap worked, he just managed to harden his skin before it detonated. How are you doing? I'm almost out of chakra. I had to use the same jutsu Naruto used, otherwise that beast thing would have caved my chest in. Sasuke grunted, narrowing his eyes at the earth mask that had returned to Kakuzu. Since I don't have nearly as much chakra as him, I'm not much use other than a distraction right now. After that final lightning cutter, Kakashi felt his chakra levels plummet dangerously low, and he thought, I'm not doing too well myself either. Kakashi had his Sharingan on the entire time and was sitting on roughly 1/8 of his chakra, despite the fact that his training had increased his chakra levels to the point where he could use it 5 times a day. Normally I would switch to long-range mode at this point, but I can't do that with only my Earth Heart. But then again, both of these brats look like they are on their last legs. Kakuzu snarled as he saw his wind mask crushed on the ground. Kakuzu closed his eyes and thought about things. He only had 2 hearts remaining, his earth and water hearts. While both of his opponents were near death, he would need to use taijutsu to close it in and finish it. Both of his opponents were lightning elements with the Sharingan and the ability to pierce through his Doden. Domu, Earth Release. Earth Spear. Kakuzu had a lot of chakra left, so he could concentrate on Kakashi while the genin was distracted by his mask. But ultimately, it came down to who would arrive first with reinforcements. The rest of their small group, or Hedan, whoever had the fewest people would lose if it turned into a 2-on-3 or a 4-on-2 situation because there was power in numbers. Kakuzu hardened his skin and opened his eyes. You had better get on with it, Hedan. Haku and Zabuza versus Hedan. As he ducked another slash from Zabuza and leapt back to avoid being trapped by more Senbon, Hedan thought, what in the fuck are you doing, Kakuzu? Zabuza would normally be easily subdued by Hedan. That was how an S rank differed from a B rank. Even though Kakuzu had run wind chakra through Hedan's body to counter the side swipe of Kakashi's lightning cutter, Hedan was still having some trouble moving because his entire body was numbed. Hedan had taken several blows with his pike and scythe normally, that would have been sufficient to end the fight, but Zabuza and his small companion had continued to attack with the mist. Using hit-and-run strategies, Hedan hadn't even had time to consume the blood on his pike or triblated scythe. In addition, there were countless traps strewn throughout the battlefield. He was on the run again, for that reason, in order for him to carry out his ritual. 5 seconds. I just need that to get this over with. Only 5 Jashin cursed seconds. Hedan leapt to one of the numerous incomplete circles scattered across the battlefield, stomped his foot down, and completed drawing the circle before he had to duck to avoid being beheaded. Zabuza jumped over Hedan's swing and landed an overhead chop, forcing Hedan to leap back as he lashed out with his scythe. The ground surrounding his ritual circle was being destroyed once more, and Hedan cursed. He jumped to another partially completed one, swore once more as he felt himself set off another trap, and snarled when he noticed a flurry of shuriken and kunai approaching him. Ignoring the fact that his chest now resembled minced meat rather than someone's torso, he gritted his teeth and charged through the storm of sharp weapons, landing at the partially completed blood circles and spilling his blood on the ground. Having to duck to avoid blindness, he cursed as he finished the circle and brought his scythe to his mouth. Hedan spun his scythe at the start of the triangle's first line to stop a Senbon onslaught halfway through the second line of the triangle. Hedan smiled. He would only need to consume the blood on his scythe and return to the circle to win if he completed one of his ritual circles. Hedan. Hisatsu Hyoso, Ice Release, certain kill ice spears. As the ground surrounding him was destroyed by numerous ice spears, Hedan jumped away and cursed once more. When their enemy landed in front of them, Zabuza and Haku both had to wince. The sheer number of wounds Hedan had was insane, but he appeared to have a regeneration factor because minor wounds went away in seconds and major wounds in minutes. His pants had been ruined beneath his knees, and his cloak had been so thoroughly torn that it only resembled a strange cape. Hedan's neck had several shallow, once deep, cuts from where Zabuza attempted to decapitate him, and every inch of his body below it was covered in blood. As was already mentioned, Hedan's chest was stuck, with several shuriken and kunais still inside his chest cavity. Even though his chest was healing and the weapons were gradually being forced out, it still had the appearance of something from a horror film. Strangely enough, though, his left arm was unharmed save for a few thin blood trails from previously healed senbon wounds. His right arm was a completely different matter. There was some bone visible close to his forearms, and it appeared as though someone had taken a knife and skinned the flesh off his arm. Hedan had a huge cut that had sliced into the bone on his right thigh, and his shins were covered in senbon that was gradually being forced out as the wounds healed. However, Zabuza and Haku were also showing their fair share of injuries. Haku had lost her hair, which now fell to her shoulders, other than a few cuts and a long gash on her left arm from when Hedan had just thrown his scythe at her. She was unharmed because she was moving quickly and kept a safe distance. Though he was in greater danger, Zabuza was in comparable condition. He also had a deep stab wound in his lower left abdomen and a badly bleeding gash on his right shoulder, in addition to the smaller, superficial wounds. Damn it, I'm almost out of chakra, Zabuza thought as he slumped to one knee, feeling his control over the mist slipping as it dissipated. That's right, you fucking atheists. No more hide and go play pussy. Prepare to die, Hedan said with a crazy smile as the mist started to clear. As Hedan charged with his scythe poised for an overhead swing, Haku's eyes grew wide. She had run out of chakra, and senbon moving in front of Zabuza to block the blow was the only thing she could think of to do. Kakashi versus Kakuzu and Sasuke. To avoid an overhead swipe, Sasuke backflipped and ducked beneath one. There was nothing in his pouch when he reached for some shuriken. He grunted in exasperation, landed on a tree branch, and leapt off as a body slammed from the earth mask, crushing the aforementioned branch. When the earth mask rose and charged at Sasuke once more, he slipped beneath its legs and gave it a back kick with an axe, causing him to wince as if he had just kicked a piece of iron. After turning around, the mask struck Sasuke through a tree. As the beast charged at him again, Sasuke thought, "That definitely broke some ribs." He attempted to dodge, but some threads flew out of the beast and wrapped around his limbs and throat. A heel struck Kakashi's stomach, forcing the air out of his body while he was momentarily preoccupied with his student's danger. As he flew through the air and eventually hit the ground, Kakashi noticed Kakuzu standing above him, holding Kakashi's arms and legs in place with threads that extended from his arms. Before a swarm of threads charged at the skin above Kakashi's heart, Kakuzu uttered, "And now your heart is mine." Haku reflected on the final 2 weeks of her life as she witnessed her death in the shape of a tri-bladed scythe pointed at her face. Regarding the red-haired boy she had become acquainted with, as one would be to their kidnapper, she had been cold to him at first, but Haku had eventually been drawn into his circle and warmed up to the rather vivacious boy. Haku discovered a kindred soul in the boy over the course of the following week, someone who knew what it was like to be used as a scapegoat for something that wasn't their fault. Despite everything he had been through, the boy's bright personality and happy smile had won her over, and she had continued to prioritize her duty to her master. She was shocked to discover that, despite her happiness at being useful to her master, she was still sad that she had never had the opportunity to express her feelings to the boy before giving her life. Kakuzu felt a hand on his back, and the threads froze. "Get off my sensei." Time stood still as a stifling sensation pervaded the space. One could only characterize the aura as primordial. This sensation was Hedan's only warning before something struck his back, sending him to the ground and scattering dust all around him as he swung his scythe. Haku's and Zabuza's eyes grew wide as the dust settled with a cloak of energy enveloping him, foxtail swishing, whisker marks on his cheeks, and wild, bright red hair covering his eyes. Hedan stood over his body with one arm still outstretched towards the immobile immortal Naruto. "Sorry I'm late." Kakuzu felt his heart stop and could only gasp in a choked way. Sokker's enraged green eyes met his as he turned his head around. How? Chakra scalpels. I saw how you could harden your skin earlier, so rather than trying to break through it I decided to just cut the arteries of your heart, Sakura said, simply pushing him aside to reveal her hand glowing with blue chakra. Naruto's hair and head moved to reveal ice blue eyes with 6 concentric rings and a tiny pupil. He grinned crookedly and said, "Haku-chan, Zabuza, you both look like shit." Before she buried her head in the boy's chest and gave him a hug, Haku simply strode forward in a daze. "Naruto-kun, After glancing at Zabuza, who simply shrugged, Naruto clumsily wrapped his arms around the girl who was clutching his chest. "It's alright, I'm here." Before his eyes widened and he rushed forward, Zabuza laughed and stood up using his sword as a makeshift crutch. When Kakashi was no longer bound by Kakuzu's threads, he sprang into action. Sakura was grabbed by him as he leapt away, and the final mask beasts charged into the area where they had been moments earlier before jumping into the trees. Kakashi rushed forward and grabbed the gasping Sasuke as the thread beast was absorbed into Kakuzu's motionless body. As both Naruto and Haku stared at the pike impaling their chests, they were only able to make a choked grasp with an exclamation of savage fury. Zabuza tore his blade from the earth and swung so hard that Hedan's side cracked as he flew back with the rage of a crazed madman pushing the fanatic back. Zabuza charged Hedan as Naruto and Haku both collapsed to the ground. "Kyuubi. Don't worry Naruto, I can heal a wound like this, but the girl." Weakly, Naruto turned to face Haku, who was staring at him as well. He crawled over to face them even though he could feel the blood gushing from his stomach. "Haku-chan," Naruto uttered, his eyes welling with tears. "No, this is fine Naruto-kun, you will survive because of the Kyuubi, as long as you are safe, it is okay," Haku said with a smile despite the blood streaming from her mouth. Naruto clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He had no control over the impending death of someone he cared about. It felt familiar for some reason, which only increased his self-loathing. Haku reached up and cupped Naruto's cheek. When Haku put her hand around Naruto's neck, her eyes widened. "Naruto-kun. This last week, even when I was cold to you at first, you wormed your way into my heart, then we became closer. I found out we both came from such similar pasts, kindred spirits, before you had come, and I saw Hedan about to kill me. I had only one regret that I can now rectify. I love you." Naruto didn't notice Sasuke and Sakura coming up next to him as the light went out of Haku's eyes. The first ring of his Rinnegan flash went unnoticed. They picked up his and Haku's bodies and left without him noticing. He was unaware that the kiss had left Haku's blood in his mouth. All he knew was that someone had declared their love for him once more and they were dead once more. "Fuck, does fighting me feel like this?" As he ducked one of Zabuza's blows before taking a kick to the chest, Hedan pondered. With tears streaming down his cheeks, Zabuza knew nothing but anger. His daughter, Haku, was the source of his happiness and the reason he was able to maintain his humanity. He would be damned if he didn't at least drag the jerk who killed her down to hell with him, though, since she was now dead. He was a complete mess, with several stab wounds scattered across his body, including one that went through his right lung. A wound that had opened his stomach was causing him to bleed out. Hedan's pike was still lodged in his left kneecap, and he had lost his right arm. He persisted in charging Hedan despite this before it perished. This demon would take one final victim. As he attempted to stop another of Zabuza's crazed swings, Hedan grunted, but the force behind it split his scythe in two as Hedan threw away the bladeless shaft. He saw that Zabuza's sharpened teeth were visible despite the blood streaming from his mouth and that the bandages surrounding his mouth had been chewed off. "Even if I chop his damned head off, this jerk will still try to bite me to death." Hedan attempted to jump back to gain some separation, but Zabuza prevented him from doing so. Zabuza lunged forward and bit Hedan's shin as he fell off the ground, then threw him to the ground with an earth-shattering heel stomp. Zabuza crushed Hedan beneath him and started to carve out Hedan's chest. He was aiming to mangle the fuck out of the freak so that he would never get up again, not to hit vital points. Zabuza eventually stopped and went to one knee when Hedan's chest appeared to be hamburger meat. Zabuza remarked absently that Hedan had stopped moving after hearing Kakashi land close to him, but it was better safe than sorry. After slapping an explosive tag across Hedan's face, Zabuza rose slowly and approached Kakashi before it exploded, eliminating any possibility of the deranged Akatsuki member returning. When Kakashi saw Zabuza's condition, he felt a little sick to his stomach. With so many wounds, no living thing had any right to remain alive. Unsure of what to say, Kakashi simply pulled the pike from Zabuza's knee and assisted him in lying down. "Kakashi," Zabuza stutteringly said, hoping to say his final words before passing away, "give my sword to the brat. Tell him to cut the fucker's head off when he finds him, he'll know what I'm talking about." The nin with silver hair nodded as Zabuza's breath grew shallower. "Also, I would like to be buried next to Haku, even if I won't be going to the same place she is. I would like to be near her one last time." After putting the Kubokirabocho on his back and nodding once more, Kakashi picked up Zabuza and vanished in a shunshin. When the day finally came to an end, the sky itself appeared to weep. As the rain gradually wiped away the blood, Kakuzu stood before Hedan's ruined body. 2 arms joined to a few pieces of meat made up the upper half of his body. Since Zabuza's explosive tag had destroyed Hedan's head, Kakuzu stated bluntly, "I can't even turn your head in for your bounty." He took Hedan's arm, took off the ring that had the kanji for 3 on it, and turned to leave. Team 7 was standing near 2 graves that had a plain cross on them. Both wore kiri headbands, but Naruto's orange scarf was wrapped around one of them, as well as the 4 Konoha nin reflected on the encounter that claimed the lives of Haku and Zabuza. The sun was sinking, revealing a red dawn. Kakashi became aware of his lack of strength. Even though he might have regained some of his former possessions, it was still insufficient. All of his students were still alive only because of their comrades' sacrifice and pure luck. He would train relentlessly. After returning to Konoha, he would never have to defend himself in front of a grave again. Sakura cursed her lack of utility. All she accomplished was to heal Naruto and remove one of Kakuzu's hearts. All she could do was ensure they survived the battle because she lacked her team's frontline skills. Sakura decided that wasn't enough for her. Instead of waiting for Naruto and Sasuke to return, she would need to become stronger, faster, and more accurate in order to be able to stand with them. Sasuke continued to be perplexed by an S-rank nin's power. Even after he and Naruto had the upper hand, he was totally outclassed and would have been killed if it weren't for Kakashi. They had barely escaped with their lives while dealing with Kakashi. "So, Nisan, this is how far we are from you." With Zabuza's Kabikirabocho, decapitating carving knife, affixed to his back with chakra, and the phony hunter mask Haku wore in his hand, Naruto gazed blankly at the graves with rippled blue eyes. He turned and looked at the lowering sun. "Just like the one when I learned my family had been killed." Naruto knew Zabuza wouldn't return after he saw him charge after Hedan. After Haku died, the scream that ripped through his throat belonged to a man who would stop at nothing to defeat his enemy. He closed his eyes and recalled that Zabuza's final words to him were those spoken by Kakashi. Even though Kakashi didn't know who Zabuza was referring to, Naruto did. "When you find the fucker, cut his head off." The man who brainwashed Zabuza's old friend and killed his parents. Even though Naruto was depressed, he had someone to blame. Unlike when he had lost his family. Even though Itachi killed the clan, he knew deep down that Itachi wasn't guilty. But this time, he knew exactly who was responsible for the deaths of Zabuza and Haku. Additionally, someone was attempting to flee before Naruto could reach them. Kakashi turned to face his pupil as Naruto started to leave. "Naruto, where are you going?" Despite stopping, Naruto initially didn't turn around. When Naruto turned to reveal that he had put on Haku's hunter nin mask, Kakashi briefly believed he would not receive a response. To kill a rat, Gado's hiding place. One of Gado's thugs cried out, "What the hell is this kid?" As a terrified mercenary frantically tried to flee as far away from his inhuman opponent as possible before being viciously sliced in two by a Kabikirabocho glowing red with rage. The day was off to a great start. Gado planned to lead the men to the bridge so he could take control of it after they had all reported to his hiding place, but that's when the day went haywire. Suddenly, the building was surrounded by an odd writing that, for some reason, prevented anyone from passing. Gado's mercenaries and thugs were all trapped. Then IT showed up. Wearing a bubbling red cloak, spiky blood red hair, and an odd mask, it simply materialized in the middle of the group, attempting to escape, and started chopping everyone down with a huge butcher knife. Blood stained the hideout's walls red, and there was no mercy. The blade eventually got smashed in half by a thug wielding a huge hammer, but it appeared to mend itself by consuming the blood surrounding it. The demon seemed to be able to find them and slaughter them mercilessly, even if they made an effort to hide. The worst part was when it placed the other hand on the man's forehead and pinned him to the wall through his stomach. The demon casually tossed the man's soul to the wind as though it didn't matter after tearing it from him. After that, the demon appeared to have a purpose rather than simply destroying everyone it encountered. The office of Gado. They were as far away from the door as they could get, having blocked it with everything they owned. Although his bodyguards Zori and Waraji were not far away, Gado was already wet and hiding in a corner. Instead of there simply being no one left to scream, they hoped that whatever was killing everyone had vanished because the screams had abruptly stopped. Is it over?" Waraji said shakily as he approached the junk barricade door. Until a flaming red claw exploded through the door, slamming him against the wall and instantly killing him. With wide eyes, Zori exclaimed, "Waraji!" As he saw his partner killed in an instant before his head fell from his shoulders, he was able to see a flash of red when he turned. With uninterested eyes, Naruto observed the mercenary's head rolling on the ground. Naruto turned to face Gado, who appeared to have drained his bowls, and considered how simple it would be to enter and eliminate all of Gado's mercenaries. In order to bring everyone under Gado's payroll to his hideout, he had his clones send out messages. He then used the containment seal to trap everyone inside while Gado changed and hid. He released his transformation and summoned enough of the Kyuubi's chakra to create the one-tailed cloak that encircled his sword. Once everyone had realized they were trapped and gathered around the edge of the barrier, They were all killed because they had no chance because he was so furious. His chakra was incredibly corrosive, melting the Kabikirabocho in the process. Naruto recalled how Zabuza had poured his blood onto the blade to fix it following his battle with Kakashi. I don't know all the details, but apparently my sword used the iron in blood to repair itself, Zabuza said in response to his question to the deceased swordsman about why it did that. As a result, he started murdering the mercenaries nearby as soon as possible. His sword would then instantly mend itself using the blood that had been spilled, appearing to melt more slowly each time the cloak surrounding it vanished, and it appeared to have stopped melting at this point. Taking on an angry red sheen, however, he had already killed hundreds of mercenaries, and his sword had most likely absorbed gallons of blood. After his bowel control gave out, Gato said, "I'll give you anything you want, money, women, power, anything." His pride had left him. Please don't kill me." Without a word, Naruto's hand sprang out and seized the dishonest businessman's head. As the chakra burned off Gato's skin, he started to scream. "You couldn't give me what I want." When Gato's soul left his body and hit the ground with a dull thump, he ceased to scream knowing that he was in need. Naruto released Gato's soul to allow it to pass to the afterlife and dissipated his chakra shroud using chakra to secure the no longer red Kabikirabocho to his back. Naruto extracted a storage scroll and opened a bundle of explosive tags. The bridge of Tazuna. Smoke plumes drifted into the sky, and distant explosions could be heard. Tazuna looked toward where the explosion had occurred. "So that's the end of Gato, huh? It just seems like such a simple end to our troubles." Kakashi's Icha turned another page. He had both of his eyes open, unlike before, and his left eye appeared to be exhibiting a strange pattern. "As I said, there was no way Naruto would let Zabuza and Haku's deaths go unpunished. How long until the bridge is complete? It looks just about done." Tazuna gave a nod. He had not seen any of them since they had visited the graves of Haku and Zabuza. "Yeah, it should only take a day or so more. So how are your kids doing?" he asked. Kakashi sighed and shook his head. "Well, you probably know where Naruto is," he said as the smoke pillar rose. "Sasuke and Sakura haven't stopped training even though I told them to wait until we got back to Konoha. They think that they didn't do enough even though I said they did. Honestly, our first C rank really went foobar." "So what rank do you think you would put this mission after everything that has happened?" Even though he already knew the answer in his head, Kakashi closed his eyes and appeared to consider. "S rank." Woods. Sasuke couldn't help but wince as Sakura hit the ground again with a dull thud. She had her hair cut to just below her neck and asked him to help her train after they returned from the graves. Sasuke consented since he was holding off until he and Naruto could visit the Naka shrine at home. Sakura had been sparring for the past 3 hours, and each time she fell, she quickly got back up. "Sakura, perhaps we should take a break," Sasuke said, growing anxious. Sakura wiped some perspiration from her forehead and got back up, wiping some dirt from her brow. Even though he wasn't currently using his Sharingan, Sasuke was a very skilled taijutsu practitioner. Sakura gasped and then shakily stood up and repositioned herself. No, it's not enough. Still not enough. I want to be able to stand beside you and Naruto, not just stand behind you," she said. Sasuke closed his eyes and nodded. He opened his eyes to reveal 3 red eclipses that intersected and blazed fiercely on a black pupil. "Then I'll stop holding back." River close to where Gato hides. With a sigh, Naruto washed some of the dried blood from his arms while Sharingan spun idly. He was about to return to Tazuna's house after killing Gato when he realized he was somehow covered in blood. It was strange because the Kyuubi's cloak functioned as a kind of barrier that only allowed specific objects to pass through. He was covered in blood since, for some reason, it failed to stop it. Before returning, Naruto stripped and washed himself in a river because he was certain Tsunami wouldn't like him leaving blood all over the place. He remarked absently that although he felt some kind of vengeance for the deaths of Zabuza and Haku, he simply felt empty after killing all of those thugs and Gato. Instead of improving his mood, it only gave him a chilly sense of fulfillment that vanished the moment he remembered Haku. In addition, he was now dealing with the blood of more than 100 individuals. The thing that worried him the most was that he didn't really care. It is natural those people stood in between you and your objective as a shinobi. You were simply doing your job and they just got in the way. When Naruto heard a voice, his eyes widened and he spun around, but his hands and neck instantly turned red. She had long black hair, a perfect hourglass figure with D-cup breasts, blood-red eyes with slits in the irises, and a small, amused smile. However, none of that made Naruto look like a tomato because the academy offered a level of seduction training. She had no clothes on. She was as nude as the day she was born, with her chin resting on her knees, her arms encircling her legs, and her legs crossed, squeezing her breasts against her chest. After working his jaw for a while, Naruto closed his eyes and spun around once more. Even though he could still clearly recall the scene thanks to the Sharingan's photographic memory, it did help him relax a little since he hadn't detected her until she had made herself known. She was most likely not an enemy, therefore, it would be wise to ascertain her purpose for being here. He needed to convey a sense of assurance, though, so that they both knew he was in command. So why are you here? Yes, stuttering exudes confidence. She purred, obviously enjoying Naruto's agitated state, and the little smile turned seductive. Oh, what do you mean, Naruto-kun? She asked. Stream began to flow from Naruto's ears as he said, I've been here the whole time. She had been there from the moment he had undressed and set down the kyubi. That thought cut through his nervousness. Naruto's flush turned slightly red as he turned around and squinted, directing his chakra into a claymore and asking the woman, where is the Kabikirabocho, decapitating carving knife? In response, the woman got to her feet, appeared to pull the Kabikirabocho out of thin air before lunging at Naruto, giving him a clear view and making his blush slightly deeper. Taken by surprise, Naruto was disarmed right away and took a forceful kick to the chest, which caused him to skid across the river and land on the other side. He noticed that he had broken some ribs while coughing up blood. Naruto opened his eyes after sensing a weight on his chest and saw the woman straddling it while holding the Kabikirabocho beneath his neck. Naruto, who was having trouble breathing because one of his ribs was sticking out of his lung, asked, who are you? The woman scowled a little before standing up and throwing Naruto's clothes to him. It's a little disappointing that my new wielder is so weak, but then again, you are young, you have time to get stronger. You're related to the Kabikirabocho somehow, Naruto thought, narrowing his eyes as he put on his clothes and held his ribs, which he could already feel healing. She nodded and smiled a little as a gray kimono with silver trims appeared around her, one sleeve severed. It also featured a black obi with a circle cut out in the center. When Naruto shook his head, she took it as a cue to go on. Tell me, do you know the history of the blades of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist? The 7 ninja swordsmen is actually pretty recent, having been formed only a decade or so after Kiri, Naruto said, fighting the impulse to inquire about the woman's age. It didn't seem like a good idea for some reason. However, the blades are much older, almost dating back to the time of the Rakudo Sennin. But back then the blades were just that, simple blades. There was no absorbing metal to repair the sword, no absorbing chakra or generating lightning. Back when they were first forged, they were simply very sharp swords. Then one day they came into the hands of my siblings and I and were forever changed. We each imbued the swords with a piece of our power and our souls. The Samahata, which was once just a hooked sword, grew scales. The Kiba became able to generate its own lightning and the Kabikirabocho would be able to repair itself. Seeing the question in Naruto's eyes, she stopped so he could ask it. Naruto had a number of questions, but the first one came to him first. He had stopped holding his ribs because they had already healed. What's your name? A more somber smile replaced the woman's amused one at this point. I don't remember honestly. I think this is the first time I have been able to materialize my human form since I originally died. Call me whatever you want. When Naruto nodded, he crossed his arms and furrowed his brow as though he was thinking. His face brightened after a while, and he pounded his fist against his palm. I got it, I'll call you Kyubi-chan. The now named Kyubi initially exhibited no visible response. She then burst out laughing after beginning to giggle. Naruto's expression was one of offense. He crossed his arms and pouted in response to his further laughter when he said, What? I worked hard to come up with that name. The woman finally relaxed and said, I'm sorry, I haven't laughed that hard in forever, while grinning at the boy. Naruto smiled back, yeah, I bet, and stopped pouting. So do you have any more questions? I'm running out of chakra and soon I'll turn back into the sword. Something suddenly came to Naruto's mind. Wait, you said your soul is bound to the blade? What would happen if it was removed from it? He asked, using a power that he had just unlocked a few days earlier. In contemplation, the sword spirit placed a hand on her chin. I'm not sure. My power is intricately tied into the sword to the point where they are basically one and the same. If you were to try to remove the portion of my soul connected to the blade, it would cause the blade to enter an ethereal state following wherever you put my soul. Why? 1 second. Naruto reached out to the beast within him while meditatively closing his eyes. Hey Kyubi, are you up? Yawn now. I am. What do you want, perverted monkey? I'm not a pervert. You see, I'm in your head. I know your memories and thoughts. Yes, you are. Now what do you want? Naruto's eyebrow was twitching quickly in the outside world. You are aware of my thoughts. What are your thoughts? After a brief period of silence, the Kyubi answered, yes, I suppose it could work. It's a clever idea and I wouldn't mind some company in here either. Huh? Who is the pervert now? Still you, I'm female. Naruto blinked once as he opened his eyes twice 3 times. Wait, I thought you mentioned that bijus had no gender. We are but our original forms, we're humans. What? I'll explain later, for now you have to answer the sword spirit. Naruto opened his eyes to see Kyuubi standing directly in front of him with a distinctly unmanly scream. He collapsed onto his ass. Kyuubi was massaging her own ears. Naruto yelled, "Ow, why did you do that? You were making strange faces, I assume you were talking to the Kyuubi." "Yeah, wait, how do you know about the Kyuubi? I don't remember everything, but I do have some memories of my time as a sword. You were a Jinchuriki like Rakudo-sama." As he stood up and wiped his ass, Naruto remarked, "I see. Anyway, this might feel weird, but bear with me for a second." He closed his eyes and placed his hand on Kyuubi's forehead. When he opened his eyes, a tiny pupil with powerful blue concentric circles emerged. The Prada path, her form changed back to the blade form before faltering and vanishing as she pulled out Kyuubi's soul before he pushed it into his stomach. He observed that her soul was white with red strands giving it a pinkish tint. The mindscape of Naruto. Kyuubi landed in a crouch, then got to his feet and held her head. "Oh, that felt strange. Where am I? Are you in an area that resembles a sewer with pipes on the walls?" Naruto's voice sounded as though it were simultaneously coming from nowhere and everywhere. Kyuubi frowned and glanced around strangely. It didn't feel wet even though water was running up to the middle of her shins. "Yeah, why, where am I?" She felt as though Naruto was pumping his fist for some reason, and she said, "Yeah, it worked, Datbeo." There's a verbal tick in him, how adorable. Kyuubi smiled and put that away for later use in case she had to make fun of him. "What worked?" "I reasoned that I might have infused you with some of the Kyuubi's chakra when I killed all those thugs because your pupils were red and silted, just like mine used to be when I used it." You could hear the pride in his voice as he said, "Since your soul is essentially tied to your chakra, I could probably get you into my seal since it would think you were part of the Kyuubi, but since you only have a small amount of her chakra you wouldn't be trapped by the seal." Kyuubi laughed. "That's quite clever, Naruto-kun, but how will you use my physical form?" "I also figured that out." Before leaving the Naruto's mindscape, Kyuubi sensed a pull. When she became conscious again, she saw that Naruto was grinning broadly and that she was in sword form. Naruto twirled the sword and used chakra to fasten it to his back. "It's just like when I use the Kyuubi's chakra, and I can send you back the same way I use the Kyuubi's chakra too," he exclaimed. "Well, that's intriguing. You can use the Kyuubi chakra as a beacon to guide me back to the seal if you ever lose sight of my location." Given that the sword could communicate with him telepathically, Naruto questioned, "Yep. By the way, would you rather be out here or in the seal? All you have to do is think rather than speak loud." "I'd prefer to be outside, Naruto-kun. Your mind is pretty filthy." "I'm not a pervert, Datbeo." With Haku's mask fastened to his hip and the Kabikirabocho on his back, Naruto was making his way back to Tazuna's house. He had been bugging Kyuubi about almost everything for the last hour of their walk. He found out that, unlike her previous owners, Kyuubi would be teaching him how to wield the sword instead of letting him learn it passively. He also discovered that the Hedan, like Haku, was the Kyuubi's greatest power during her lifetime. She gave her sword the ability to freeze nearby water and transform it into ice, which caused it to absorb blood in order to heal itself. She advised Naruto to compare it to how ice was able to mend itself using its basic components and a source of cold when he expressed that he didn't understand. Similar to how the sword could mend itself using the blood's iron and her power as the source. One of his first questions was whether she felt the same damage the sword did. She told him that she didn't, but it was still sweet that he cared about her. Kyuubi thought it was good that Naruto was being distracted from his obsession with the deaths of Haku and Zabuza, even though she did find the barrage of questions a little annoying. He reached Tazuna's house simultaneously with Sakura, who appeared to be dead on her feet and was leaning on Sasuke, and Sasuke, who was a little exhausted. They both simply replied that they were training. When Naruto asked what was wrong when Kakashi and Tazuna arrived, they were informed that the bridge would be finished the following day. Team 7 was pleased that Naruto had recovered. Even though dinner was a rather typical event, everyone retired to their rooms after supper while Sasuke, Kakashi, and Naruto were in Sasuke's room having a somewhat confidential conversation. Sakura and Tazuna's family fell asleep rather quickly. Kakashi had no idea what was happening after supper. Sasuke had invited the silver-haired Jonin to his room so that he and Naruto could discuss something. Since he was wearing a rather solemn expression, Kakashi would be the target of another one of Naruto's pranks. If he arrived 3 hours late, recalling the previous one, Kakashi shuddered. "So what did you guys want to talk about?" Sasuke said, "Kakashi-sensei, do you know how to use your Mangekyo Sharingan?" After having a brief conversation with Naruto, Kakashi was surprised by that. "I know how to use Kamui, Authority of the Gods, but the reason I don't use it is because I'm not that good at it." Well, there is a tablet in the Naka Shrine that is supposed to teach you how to use the Mangekyo techniques better, Sasuke, and I plan to check it out once we got back since this mission showed us that we aren't strong enough. Since you have a Mangekyo, we wondered if you wanted to check it out with us, Naruto replied. I think that would be a good idea. The bridge was finished the following day. Naruto shook his head and told the Wave residents that it wasn't just him and that he wanted the bridge to honor everyone, despite their initial desire to call it the Great Naruto Bridge. It was ultimately dubbed the Bridge of Bonds. Not much was said as Team 7 made their way back to Konoha. Although Naruto was his normal intelligent self, he occasionally appeared to withdraw inward on occasion. Sasuke would gaze at the road as though he were staring into someone's back while Kakashi read his Icha-Icha. Sakura moved away from Sasuke and Naruto to consider ways to strengthen himself. Hokage Tower. Team 7 reporting back from a C-rank mission turned S-rank. When Kakashi made his statement, the room fell silent while sorting the scrolls. Iruka had dropped them. Everyone was looking at Kakashi with wide eyes after the Sandame dropped his pipe after Kakashi's stunning declaration. The Sandame was the first to recover and said, "Could you repeat that, Kakashi-kun? I'm not sure I heard you correctly." Of course, Hokage-sama. Team 7 reporting back from a C-rank mission turned S-rank. The Hokage's gaze sharpened instantly. Tell me what happened. Kakashi nodded. While escorting the client to Zuna, we came across C-rank missing nins, the Demon Brothers. They were easily dispatched, and when we confronted Tazuna, he admitted that he lied about the mission parameters. Due to how well trained my genin were, I decided to continue the mission. Believe I would be able to handle any threat and my genin could save me if I was over my head. We later ran into a rank missing nin, Momochi Zabuza. While I engaged Zabuza, my genin had sensed that he had an accomplice that they proceeded to capture, forcing Zabuza to surrender. We would arrive at Tazuna's house with no issue, and over the next 2 weeks Naruto bonded with Zabuza and Haku, causing them to agree to help us as thanks for not simply killing them. A few days before the bridge was finished, however, Naruto had informed us that Gato had hired 2 S-rank missing nin, Kakuzu of Takigakure and Hedan of Yukigakure, to kill Zabuza, us and the bridge builder because of shadow clones he had transformed and hid in Gato's hideout. In the resulting skirmish, Zabuza, Hedan and Haku were all killed while Kakuzu was severely injured and fled. With his last words, Zabuza passed his sword onto Naruto, who proceeded to kill Gato and a great number of his thugs. Afterwards, the bridge was completed. Sarutobi gave a shaky nod. It must have been terrifying to run into 2 S-rank missing nins on your first out-of-village mission. When Kakashi was the only one who showed up for the mission debriefing, he had been prepared for the worst, but now he understood that the man must have sent his genin home for some rest. Very well, I will be expecting a written report. You may inform Team 7 that the payment will be delivered to them personally and they are being given a 3-week leave to recover. Hokage-sama. Kakashi acknowledged with a nod of his head before vanishing in a shunshin. Before the shrine of Naka, with his Sharingan active, Naruto questioned, "So are you both ready?" With his Mangekyo in the shape of an atom, Sasuke nodded. Kakashi's pinwheel-shaped Mangekyo was visible when he pulled up his headband. Frowning, he chose to ask the Kyuubi, since no matter how much chakra he put into his eyes, his Mangekyo wasn't activating. "Hi Kyuubi, are you KN? The Rinnegan is the natural evolution of the Sharingan. You should be able to do everything you could do with the Mangekyo with your Rinnegan." Naruto gave his Sharingan a mental nod and stopped feeding it chakra, which caused it to return to his Rinnegan. He turned and nodded to his friends. Presuming Naruto was competent, Sasuke entered the Naka Shrine and broke the seal that concealed the entrance to the Uchiha meeting room. The area they were looking for was surrounded by stone rather than wood, despite the fact that the covert Uchiha meeting room was rather large. It featured 2 braziers that were always burning and 2 strange symbols on the left and right walls, but they weren't interested in any of that. Instead, a huge tablet that was roughly twice as wide as it was tall rose up to Kakashi's waist. On either side of it were 2 Uchiha symbols and another inscription. After exchanging glances, the 3 approached and attempted to use their individual dojutsus to read the tablet. Their eyes grew wide as they read more and more of the tablet. Sasuke stepped back, visibly shaken. "What the?" Kakashi uttered while covering his mouth. Naruto, who was able to read more of the tablet than either Sasuke or Kakashi, concluded their remarks with a loud "Fuck." In the larger section of the covert Uchiha meeting room, Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi sat in a stunned state. At last, Kakashi broke the engulfing silence by saying, "Naruto, Sasuke, I'm sorry, but your clan is fucked up. In our defense," Sasuke started slowly, but the brothers didn't react right away. "Naruto's adopted and my family were relatively normal until Itachi Ni-san killed everyone," Sasuke concluded in a baffled tone. Naruto merely nodded silently. On second thought, Sasuke went on, If this is why Itachi Ni-san killed our clan, I don't think I can blame him anymore. What they read on the tablet made the three Sharingan possessors shudder. What they discovered was in it. It included the secrets of Uchiha Madara's body, the tale of the Rakudo Sennin and the Ten Tails, and the Ain no Mangekyo, Eternal Kaleidoscope, which is arguably the most unsettling of the Uchiha's secrets. It also included information on how to use the Mangekyo techniques correctly. One's eyesight was a high price to pay for the Mangekyo's three most potent techniques. If the tablet was accurate, Naruto would never lose his sight while his Rinnegan was active, but it would gradually erode his Sharingan's vision. Both Naruto and Sasuke, who had only used Susanoo, he with the ability to help by all means, for a brief period of time, did not experience vision degeneration. After killing his father in order to unlock the Mangekyo, Madara personally witnessed this degeneration. He had taken his brother Mangekyo and transplanted Izuna's eyes into his own after his eyesight had completely failed from excessive use. However, the horrors of Madara's self-strengthening actions did not end there. In an attempt to awaken the Rinnegan, Madara stole some of Hashirama's cells and integrated them onto himself during the death match at the Valley of the End between the Uchiha Patriarch and the Shodai Hokage. Whether he was successful or not was not indicated on the tablet. The Uchiha clan was genuinely dysfunctional. In order to gain power, one would murder a close relative and mortally injure their brother in order to escape the repercussions of that action. According to what the three Sharingan users had read, Madara was the first to succeed rather than the first to try. It seems that Sasuke and Shisui were two of only three Uchiha in history to successfully unlock the Mangekyo without killing a loved one. The tablet spoke of a third Uchiha who had unlocked their Mangekyo without the killing of one who was close to them, but it didn't mention a name. It was Naruto who first recovered from his shock. Guys, I don't think we should tell the village this, Naruto said, his eyes hard. Kakashi questioned, what do you mean, Naruto? Sighing, Naruto closed his eyes and said, this village sees what it wants to see. If we were to tell them about this, they wouldn't welcome Itachi back and see him as a hero. They would see him as a threat. The next Uchiha Madara. You might want to believe in the village, but I can't. Naruto's perception of the village had been negatively impacted by Konoha's treatment of him. He detested the majority of civilians. Sasuke scowled. He understood what Naruto was saying, but he still wanted his Ni-san back. I agree with Naruto. At least he now had an explanation for Itachi's actions. Kakashi nodded while he leaned back and ran his hand through his hair. As far as Kakashi knew the boy, he would never take his brother's eyes like Madara did unless Itachi specifically asked him to. So what do we do now? While Naruto and I can practice our Mangekyo powers, Sasuke can't unless he wants to go blind. Sasuke closed his eyes and considered his predicament. Although it wasn't the most elegant solution, he had one that would work since Kakashi hadn't yet covered his Sharingan. Sasuke could see the surprise in both of his eyes as he looked at the Jonin. Kakashi-sensei, can you teach me how to fight with one of my eyes covered? Kakashi couldn't comprehend Sasuke's logic when he said, I could, but why? Sasuke gestured toward the tablet made of stone. This tablet says that if you use Amaterasu or Tsukiyomi, then whichever eye the respective jutsu is in will slowly go blind. I'll just let the eye with Amaterasu go blind, then I'll finish my fire manipulation training and use it to manipulate Amaterasu. Sasuke replied with a tenacious expression on his face. Naruto threw his arms in the air and exclaimed, that's an awesome idea. Datbeo. Sasuke smiled as he turned to face his adopted younger brother. In his younger years, he still used the absurd phrase, you should work on perfecting the Susanoo. That put an end to Naruto's joy. What, why? Naruto exclaimed, his eyes wide. The way Susanoo is properly manifested, according to the tablet, is by having one eye create the physical body while the other eye moves it. But Naruto smiled. I can manifest it with my bloodline and then use both of my eyes to move it. After giving his sensei a nod, Sasuke asked, what are you going to do, Kakashi? With a simple smile, the masked Shinbo said, oh, I have an idea. Don't worry, I think I'll keep it secret for now. What? Exclaimed Naruto as he stood up. We just told you what we're doing. Why can't you tell us what you're doing? I think it'll be a good surprise. After a month, while out for a walk with her team, one Hyuga heiress remarked, I wonder what Naruto-kun and his team has been doing. I haven't seen him for 2 weeks. I want to know that too. You know, I can't even find any of them except Sakura, and when I asked her she said that she hadn't seen them for almost 2 weeks. Kiba was grumbling. It is logical that they are training as Sakura-san was. After all, it is not every day you survive an encounter with 2 S-rank missing nins, Shino said as he raised his glasses. The news that Team 7 had finished an S-rank mission quickly went viral. While the shinobi side believed Naruto used the power of the Kyuubi to save his teammates, civilians tried to give all the credit to their Uchiha-sama. Right away because Hitaki Kakashi was good but not good enough to defeat 2S rank missing nin. Many of the more sensible civilian council members, including Ichiraku Tuchi, had already resigned from their posts as the Shinobi Council grew increasingly irritated with their civilian counterparts. Kiba turned to face Hinata and exclaimed, "There's no way that the dead last could take down an S rank or even Sasuke Teme. Back me up here, Hinata." "Oh, I wouldn't know about that," Hinata said, her eyes sparkling, and then she turned to leave. Kiba looked around and saw that Shino had somehow vanished. "What? There's no way. Back me up here, Shino. Shino?" A few isolated mountain ranges. As he examined his advancements in fire manipulation, Sasuke gasped he was working on the second task, which was to burn an entire tree in less than a minute. After finishing the first one, which was to burn a leaf in less than 10 seconds, Sasuke wiped perspiration from his forehead and looked over at Naruto and Kakashi's training area. Naruto's eyes were tightly closed as he focused on using his bloodline to create his Susanoo. Half of the upper arm and half of the ribs were able to materialize the way he was attempting to use the Susanoo. Now used a lot less chakra than when he used it during the battle with Hedan and Kakuzu, but it was more difficult to focus on. Even though he was immobile while using it, it was still preferable to nothing. Sasuke couldn't tell what Kakashi was staring at, but it appeared to be something. The air appeared to warp around the area of his focus, which was strange. Of all of them, Kakashi had made the biggest progress. He could now perform the same action as Naruto and maintain his Sharingan at all times, which was what the silver-haired man had been concentrating on for the majority of their training sessions at the Naka Shrine. Sasuke returned his attention to the tree he was working on, idly remarking that their small group had not interacted with anyone else for the past 2 weeks. It still took 8 minutes as of right now. The outer reaches of Konoha. Sakura ran laps around Konoha, panting. When Sasuke informed her 2 weeks ago that he, Kakashi, and Naruto were all heading somewhere to train their Sharingans, she felt left behind and couldn't help but feel depressed. She was only a medic at the moment, but even a medic could be feared. She had read about the slug Sannin Tsunade and how she gave herself superpowers by using her precise chakra control for the past 2 weeks. Sakura had been experimenting with this. Sakura paused close to a tree and briefly examined her fist before concentrating her chakra and striking the tree. The tree cracked and splintered, but it remained upright. Sakura clenched her teeth and used her right fist to punch her chakra once more. The tree fell over itself with a loud boom. Sakura smiled and went back to her laps. She added that she would have to buy gloves. Akamichi barbecue. Shikamaru and Asuma scowled as Ino squealed. "Can you believe what they're saying? My precious Sasuke-kun took down a big scary S-rank missing nin all by himself." Asuma waved and said, Now Ino, I'm sure Naruto-san and Sakura-san helped too." Forehead and the dead last. "I bet Sasuke-kun had a harder time because he had to defend those two," Ino shot back, airily. Shikamaru said in a slack voice, "Troublesome. That's not true, Ino. Naruto's probably equal to or stronger than Sasuke." Between mouthfuls, Choji asked, "What munch do you munch mean, munch Shikamaru?" Shikamaru glanced at his closest companion before turning toward Ino. Sasuke and Naruto were both hiding their true strength during the academy. They wanted to be put on the same team, so they decided to have one of them be the dead last and the other be Rookie of the Year. For reasons I don't know, they decided Naruto would be the dead last and Sasuke would be Rookie of the Year. When I found out, they made me promise not to tell anyone until they graduated. Even though Asuma remained lethargic, you could tell he was listening to the question, why would they do that? Shrugged. Any number of reasons. I think it might have something to do with how most of the civilians seem to dislike Naruto for some reason. Clever little brats, they pulled the wool over the eyes of the whole village, Asuma said, nodding. People would assume that the dead last would never amount to anything and that the last Uchiha was a conceited jerk, but when it's too late, they show their true potential. Asuma noticed the Yondaime Hokage's head on the mountain range outside the restaurant's window. You chose a really intriguing one, Yondaime-sama. Kumagakure is the terrifying rapping of Killer Bee, the Jinchuriki of the Hibachi no Ushi Oni, eight-tailed demon ox. Began. Yo. You stoked for the upcoming exam, Yugito? A girl with long blonde hair and cat-like eyes screamed. Shut up, Bee. No, I would much rather be staying in Kumo. Why'd I even have to go with you and Raikage-sama anyway? What's her problem? Asked a girl with dark skin and red hair as she edged away from the girl. She is coming with us to the upcoming Chunin exams in Konoha to meet her fiancé. She doesn't want to because she is already a Chunin. I don't think Raikage-sama has told her she had a fiancé yet, retorted a girl with long blonde hair, blue eyes, and a huge chest. A boy with a sucker in his mouth started, but what if her fiancé doesn't like her? What if Konoha is invaded while we are there during the Chunin exams? What if a criminal organization? Before the red-headed girl slapped him in the back of the head. Shut up, Omoi. Ground 9 training. A man wearing a green leotard and a bowl cut yelled as he ran, "My young students. We have to fan our flames of youth even more. There is no time to rest while my eternal rival Kakashi fans the flames of both his students and himself." A bowl cut boy wearing a green leotard yelled, running until his voice could no longer be heard, "Yosh! My flames of youth shall burn brightly the Chunin exams. If I cannot obtain a promotion, then I will do 100 laps around Konoha on my thumbs. If I cannot do that, then I will climb the Hokage monument with one arm. If I cannot do that." As he panted on the ground, a boy with long hair and white eyes said, "There is something wrong with those people." "It's just Lee and Guy Sensei," said a girl with her hair pulled up in buns that gave her a panda-like appearance. "I thought you would be used to it by now." As he sat up, the boy grunted and said, "I am, but they have seemed even more youthful than before these past 2 weeks." With a sigh, the girl with the bun shook her head. "Naruto, what have you been up to?" Despite the fact that it caused half of the ribcage to fade, Naruto grunted intently as he used his chakra to complete creating one arm of his Susanoo. If not for the mental dialogue he is having right now, this would be so much simpler. "Really? That night, then, was Naruto-kun conceived?" Kyuubi's voice echoed. Indeed, Kushina-san and Minato-san had sex about 69 times before Naruto was conceived. I think the position they did it in that night was. "Stop talking." With all of his mental strength, Naruto screamed, his cheeks flushed red with rage. Trying to sound innocent, the Kyuubi asked, "What? We were just talking about how your father liked to stick it to your mouth." "Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up." Naruto jumped up and yelled, "Shuchup." He clutched his head and opened one eye to see Sasuke and Kakashi staring at him. Naruto apologized and then sat back down, laughing sheepishly and scratching the back of his head. "I detest you so much," Naruto complained in his head, his cheeks still slightly flushed. "I love you too." "Hey, what was the position?" Kyuubi inquired. "Is there anything more worthwhile for you to discuss?" "Not really. I like making fun of you more, true dat." "Why don't you talk about, I don't know." "Oh yeah, Kyuubi, didn't you say the Bijus used to be human?" snapped Naruto's left eyebrow. Yes, we Biju were once human, but our human bodies were burned to ashes when the sage gave us the Jubi's chakra. Hell, I don't remember anything from my human past." "Why don't you simply transform back into your human form using the chakra that Naruto-kun gave you?" "Well, I guess I could do that. Speaking of that, I need to discuss something with you. Enter the seal." Before he willed himself to the seal, Naruto thought, Hold, give me a second." The mindscape of Naruto. As Naruto entered the seal, he saw Kyuubi standing in front of the Kyuubi's cage wearing the same kimono that she had on when he last saw her. He also noticed a huge ball of dark blue chakra protruding from the Kyuubi's hunches. Is that?" With wide eyes, Naruto pointed to the ball of chakra that appeared to be several yards taller than the Kyuubi and towered over both him and the sword spirit. In response, the Kyuubi continued examining the enormous orb of chakra and said, "Indeed it is." Grabbing his head, Naruto exclaimed, "What? How in the world am I able to have so much chakra?" "Kyuubi, it's bigger than you. I wasn't kidding when I said you would become a pseudo-Biju if you didn't find a way to control your chakra," the Kyuubi said, prodding the orb in various locations. "This thing probably has more chakra than the Sandy no Kyodai game, three-tailed giant turtle, but it doesn't have as much as I do. How exhausted are you right now?" When Naruto raised his shirt and channeled chakra, the Shiki Fuin, dead soul-consuming seal, materialized, and another seal with the number 40 superimposed on it. "I was just going to wrap myself in some of it to give myself a human form, but I could try to absorb the entire thing into myself. At this rate the boy is going to have as much chakra as I have sealed in here by the time he's 16. We need to find some way to get rid of it before it breaks the seal," the Kyuubi scowled. "I believe the chakra was sent straight to you by the seal." Gazing at the seal, Naruto thought something was amiss. The Kyuubi pointed to the enormous ball of chakra and remarked, "It does, but the larger part is put in here. This must be eliminated before it overwhelms the Shiki Fuin. I'll take everything in, but I'll likely be gone for a few days. Additionally, it's likely to transform me back into my original human form." "Why would it just be comparable?" did Naruto ask. "Because your hair turns red because of the Uzumaki chakra. I'm likely to experience a similar outcome." The Kyuubi winced as it inserted its arm into the ball of chakra. Knowing that it would be out for a few days, the chakra gradually sank into the Kyuubi's arm before moving along its skin, seemingly covering its body. Naruto and Kyuubi watched with a little concern. The giant ball of chakra eventually covered the Kyuubi before it started to glow and shrink. When the glow subsided, Naruto let out a strangled gasp and turned red like a tomato, while Kyuubi grinned in amusement at what he saw. The human form of Kyuubi had long red hair that reached her knees. She was sleeping, so they couldn't see her eyes, but that didn't stop them from admiring her figure. Her hourglass figure, supple B-cup breasts, and mile-long legs would have made her appear relatively human if it weren't for the 9 long bushy fox tails behind her and the fox ears on her head, both of which were the same shade of orange that she had in her Biju form. She was also naked. Kyuubi had a cunning plan. While Naruto stood gaping like a fish, she dispelled her kimono, walked through the bars, picked up Kyuubi from behind, and gently groped her breasts. When the humanized Biju let out a slight moan, Naruto couldn't take it any longer and was out like a light. The sword spirit couldn't help but smile. Away from the mindscape of Naruto, as Naruto blasted back with a powerful stream of blood from his nose, Sasuke and Kakashi were forced to halt their activities and gaze. Somewhere along a road in an arbitrary location. For an instant, a big man with white hair paused his journey toward Konoha and gazed up at the sky. I don't know why, but I feel proud of my godson. All of a sudden he must have finally adopted pervert ways. I may not have ruined you, Minato, but I got your son. Ha 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 ha. Naruto is just very innocent, not quite Jiraiya. Cave. A huge stone humanoid in a cave had 8 silhouettes on its fingers. With eyes that rippled, a silhouette called Kakuzu boomed, "What happened to Hedan? We specifically got him for you so you couldn't get rid of him?" "I didn't get rid of him," grunted Kakuzu's silhouette. "Itachi, your brother's team is truly impressive. We encountered them while searching for some bounties. They took 4 of my hearts and killed Hedan." Itachi's collar would twitch if one looked closely and his mouth wasn't covered by it. "We will not be able to find you another partner," the silhouette with the rippled eyes said, adding, "This is troubling. I don't want to lose any more people before we begin the search for Jinchuriki, so everyone, get in shape until I find a suitable partner. Kakuzu, you will remain alone for the time being. We'll meet in 3.5 years, Ba." Itachi's voice said, "Excuse me, Leader-sama. What is it, Itachi? Unless something is really important, you usually don't speak up." "Orochimaru will be invading Konoha during the Chunin exams. According to sources I have, I want to go there to scout out the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and kill him." "Now hold on," a rough voice from a hunchback silhouette said. "Why should you be the one to kill Orochimaru? He was my companion." "It is a question of can or cannot, not of who should or shouldn't. Any shinobi worth his salt would be watching you as soon as you stepped foot in Konoha, but I can sneak in without anyone noticing." Itachi's point was acknowledged by the hunchback silhouette, which grunted in affirmation. The rippled-eyed silhouette nodded. "Very well. During the Chunin exams, Kisame and Itachi will both travel to Konoha and conclude Orochimaru. We can't have loose ends, so please return the ring if you can find it." "It appears that we will be traveling to Konoha." "Itachi anticipating a reunion with your family?" Kisame grinned and got to his feet. Itachi exhibited a slight lip twitch but no other visible reaction. "Naruto, how have you changed?" "Sasuke. Sanagakure." A man wearing the Kazekage hat and a veil over his face gazed out the window at his sandy village. The Wind Daimyo was slowly killing Suna by outsourcing jobs to Konoha, and if the Daimyo didn't change his mind soon, Suna would have no choice but to accept the Kazekage side as the Daimyo once again turned down his request for additional funding. Not even noticing his siblings' frightened presence, Gaara smiled as he crushed another man and felt his lifeblood steep into his sand. He would soon be attending the Chunin exams, where he would have plenty of chances to prove his existence. Hidden sound. A figure with long black hair and yellow snake-like eyes sat on a throne in an underground lair. "Orochimaru-sama," a white-haired man with bespectacles said, "I have news you might find interesting." Sanin, the treacherous snake Orochimaru, grinned and said, "Oh, what it is that I would find so interesting?" According to rumors, Sasuke-kun's team was able to take down a member of Akatsuki and near mortally wound the other. Orochimaru grinned like he was eating shit at this point. "I guess I might as well bring extra enzymes so I can mark all of them," he said. "After all, I don't come across someone who can destroy my old pals very often." "Which ones were they able to eliminate?" "Hedan and Kakuzu." Throughout his underground base, Orochimaru's laugh reverberated. One thing was overlooked as groups and individuals from all over the world prepared for the impending Chunin exams in Konoha. Contact kills any plan. 3 figures strolled towards Konoha along the road. The most striking feature of one was his eyes, which were red with 3 tomo around the pupil, or the enormous cleaver-like blade on his back. He wore black shinobi pants that went up to his mid-shin, where they were bandaged off, and a white t-shirt with a hood that had a swirl in the middle and red flames on the edge of the sleeves. One arm was completely bandaged up with a glove. While the other arm was bare, his forehead protector was wrapped across his chest, and he wore spiky bright red hair in a rough ponytail that reached his mid-back. With the exception of a face mask that covered his neck, the second figure was somewhat more plain. His silver hair, which defied gravity, and the scar over his left eye, which was red with 3 tomo, were noticeable features, basically the same as normal, but his left eye is uncovered. The final one was dressed in black shinobi pants, a white zip-up t-shirt with a high collar and an image of a Uchiha fan on the back. He also had the Sharingan, but only in his right eye, while his left eye was left pupilless and red. His Shippuden outfit minus the Orochimaru rope. How is Sakura adjusting to the gift you gave her, in your opinion? Sasuke questioned his 2 friends. Naruto smiled and said, she's almost grasping it. In any case, we should be able to get some practice because we have a week before the Chunin exams. She told me that she could likely kick your ass in a match of pure taijutsu. After scowling, Sasuke grunted in his characteristic Uchiha manner. Not much better for you. In our most recent team spar a week ago, she almost punched your Susanoo right through the rib cage. It's a good that I called in that favor from Guy so that he would help teach Sakura some taijutsu, Kakashi said, nodding as he turned another page of his Icha. Since graduating from the academy, she has significantly improved. I just hope that she doesn't get a bowl haircut and start wearing spandex from spending too much time around Lee or Guy-sensei. Naruto was shivering. I agree with you on the haircut part, Kakashi said, placing his hand on his chin in contemplation. Sasuke gave a wise nod, and Kakashi trailed off. When she fills out the spandex in a few years, it might not be so bad. Turning to his friends, Naruto scowled and asked, what's wrong with you two? Give up your perverted behavior. Everything is a pervert. Some people simply conceal it more effectively than others. A voice echoed in his head. Naruto's outraged response was, hey, I'm not a pervert. That epic nosebleed you had 2 months ago begs to differ, said a different voice, laughing. The Kyuubi snarled at the sword spirit as Naruto's face brightened, saying, by the way, I still don't understand how you did that. I haven't been in a human form since I turned into a Biju, so you know my body is still sensitive, so it felt strange. Come on, Kyuubi-chan, you know you liked it, Kyuubi purred in a sensual tone. Sasuke and Kakashi exchanged a glance and laughed when they noticed Naruto blushing like a schoolgirl. They knew that eventually they would corrupt him, so they changed the subject to try to be kind to the poor, agitated boy. So you both knew I planned on entering you into the Chunin exams in a week. I'm confident that you will all pass with flying colors if you all stay together. So, are we close enough yet? Naruto smiled. After closing his left eye and nodding, Kakashi placed his hands on his genin's shoulders and the 3 men vanished in a whirlpool. Haruno Sakura welcomed the trio as they arrived at Training Ground 7 in a whirl of warp space sometime in the past 2 months. Sakura had changed her attire, and now she was wearing a top that was similar to her previous one but ended at her waist, with bike shorts and a skirt underneath, her outfit in the second part of canon. Welcome back boys, how did your journey go? Sakura-chan, it was fantastic. We accomplished our goals and then some, Naruto grinned as he spoke. Having grown accustomed to the vivacious redhead, Sakura shook her head, so I assume you're enrolling us for the Chunin exams in a few days, Kakashi-sensei? On that note, I should head over, the man in the mask nodded 5 minutes ago. The meeting began. Kakashi waved as the surrounding air warped and he vanished, saying, I'll see you all later. Before turning to face his team, Sasuke muttered, TCH show off, so you guys want to grab something to eat? While Sakura nodded, Naruto scowled. Go ahead, you guys, I'm heading out to investigate. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances and shrugged before leaving as their third teammate vanished with a shunshin. Neither of them even realized that they were essentially on a date. Sarutobi Konohamaru ran away from his tutor Ibutsu, who always called him an honorable grandson and advised him to focus on the fundamentals. Konohamaru ignored the obstacles in his way and collided with something, landing on his butt. Ow ow, Konohamaru rubbed his butt before being lifted by his shirt's rumple. Hi there, you brat. You bumped into me. My goodness, that cat is enormous. The giant cat gritted his teeth and was about to punch the brat when he felt a hand encircle his wrist, Konohamaru said, his eyes wide. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Temari and Kankuro both turned to see Naruto standing beside them. I didn't even sense him, thought Kankuro. More along the lines of, ooh, what do we have here? Temari's thoughts were. After leaving Kakashi's Kamui, authority of the gods, Naruto felt a large chakra signature. Since only a Jinchuriki would have reserves that large, he chose to leave Sasuke and Sakura on their little date to investigate. When he arrived, he noted the red head sitting in the tree before moving to prevent the Sandame's grandson from being punched out. Kankuro shook the child's hand and grunted, saying, I was just going to teach the brat a lesson. He sighed and shook his head, saying, I don't think it's a good idea to teach the Hokage's grandson a lesson in the middle of a street. Konohamaru immediately jumped back up and swung his fist at the strangely dressed Suna shinobi after Kankuro fainted and dropped him. That's right, you big bully. Kankuro said, take a step back before I tell my Gran-ao about you. Naruto bopped him on the head, and Konohamaru grabbed his head. Hey, what were you doing for? You were acting rudely. Give up using your grandfather's name for everything if you wish to emerge from his shadow. Now leave this place. Konohamaru's life would be forever altered by Naruto's words, whether he realized it or not, but he rushed on because this isn't about the little ankle bitter. Though he rarely used his serious glare, Naruto's eyes flickered to the tree and he continued to glare at the Suna shinobi, saying, who's your friend? Later, after a whirl of sand, Gaara materialized in front of Naruto, who was aware that the boy before him was a Jinchuriki but was unsure of which one. The Ichibi is most likely the culprit. It was the Tanuki's habit to try to make everyone around him go crazy. You are strong. Gaara's face appeared to have a stoic expression because of his sand armor. What is your name? Gaara sensed the boy in front of him had power, and killing him would undoubtedly prove his existence. If one could have seen behind his sand armor, they would have been terrified by the expression, which was one of bloodthirst. After hearing Sakura's stories, Naruto reluctantly replied, Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara had been shunned to the extent that the Ichibi's Jinchuriki thought he could prove his existence by killing other people, and it chilled him to the bone to think that he could have become like that if he hadn't been adopted by the Uchiha family. Gaara said, Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto, before a bloodlustful smile broke across his face. Killing you will prove my existence. I'm excited to shed your blood for you, Mom. It appeared as though they were going to fight until both Jinchuriki felt a hand on their heads. The killing intent that Gaara was radiating seemed to intensify at that moment, causing both of his siblings to back off. Naruto, on the other hand, simply stood his ground and sent his own killing intent at Gaara, which seemed to cause the insane boy's grin to widen even more. When the masked man suddenly appeared, both Jinchuriki unconsciously took a step back, saying, Kakashi-sensei, I thought you were at the Jonin's meeting. Kakashi smiled, but you could still hear the steel in his voice, and said, Now children, no fighting until the Chunin exams start. In response, the man with silver hair stopped grinning and opened his eyes, saying, I was. The Sand Nin turned pale even more when Kakashi said, I have the forms and I was coming to find you and the rest of your team when I felt your killing intent from half a mile away. The child's sensei appeared to be able to teleport, and when Kakashi turned to face them, the Sabaku siblings all instinctively retreated, including Gaara, who said, I would appreciate if you were not antagonizing my student. Even though Kakashi's Sharingan looked exactly like Naruto's, it seemed to somehow make them feel smaller and helpless. Is that okay? If you want to tear each other's limbs off, that's fine, but please wait until the exams where it won't become an international incident. Kakashi turned to face the Suna Nin, who were now on the verge of urinating their pants. They nodded quickly and, unwilling to display their fear, fled as quickly as they could. Naruto pouted and said, That was mean, Kakashi-sensei. He had the matter resolved. After grinning and stroking Naruto's untidy red hair, Kakashi handed him a piece of paper and said, I'll give Sakura and Sasuke theirs later. Even Naruto smiled as he accepted the paper, and the Jonin gave a little perverted giggle at that. Won't want to interrupt their date after all. Naruto, who hadn't slept well in a while, stood up and started to walk back to his room in the Uchiha district. Don't let them catch you saying that, he said as Kakashi twisted away. The ramen stand in Ichiraku. How far along are you and Naruto in your training? Sakura and Sasuke were eating at Ichiraku's ramen when she remarked, I'm assuming he finished his because Kakashi-sensei is just teleporting around. Naruto didn't quietly finish what he wanted to do, but he ended up finishing something else, Sasuke said, slurping up his noodles as he nodded. How was your training, then? Sasuke simply grinned as a ball of black fire materialized in his right hand. You weren't merely powdering your nose for the past week, I'm sure. Gai-sensei really helped me with my taijutsu, but I still want to do medical jutsu, the pink-haired Kunoichi replied, touching his shoulder and making it go limp. Unfortunately, the hospital's programs aren't as good as they should be. I've been playing around with Tsunade-sama of the Sanin's super strength technique. I believe I have the main idea down, but I'd like to work out the specifics later. Hey, would you mind mending my arm? The mindscape of Naruto. Sparks flew and the sound of steel on steel reverberated, and both fighters brandished what appeared to be a large butcher knife, though one was longer than the other. A lovely woman in a kimono was using one arm to wield the longer butcher knife while hammering the other, a boy with spiky red hair, to the ground. Are you certain there isn't a less painful way of doing this? Naruto grunted as he overextended on one of his swings and was sent flying with a smack to the face with the side of a blade. He skidded to a stop, wiped the blood from his nose, and twisted it back into place. He complained the training sessions with the Kabikirabocho amounted to him being continuously beaten to death. He had been improving and was able to withstand the ancient sword spirit for longer, but because the spirit was so much more experienced, he was still getting his ass kicked like no tomorrow most of the time. In addition, the majority of the blows that would have killed him were directed at his head, and even though she struck him with the side of the blade, it still hurt. I told you, I can't train you in my personal style because our body types are just too different. You're built more for speed and quick strikes, while my build is more flexible and meant for single strike takedowns. Kyuubi sighed. Swinging her blade onto her shoulder, Naruto attempted to appear more mature on the outside, but he was more than happy to act his age. But I can help you develop your instincts and reflexes. Get back up and stop complaining now. Naruto stood back up and assumed his stance, complaining about sadistic sword spirits. Hey, you said my body was more designed for quicker strikes and speed? Naruto looked at his blade as he spoke. When he got a nod in return, he placed his hand on his chin and said, Hey, is there any way I can make you thinner? Kyuubi shook her head and started laughing, saying, Remember what I said about keeping an eye on what you say. Naruto-kun. Naruto had a bad habit of saying things that could be interpreted in a variety of ways, and it was always amusing to watch him attempt to apologize after being called out on it. Most women don't like it when you say that about their body. Oh no, you have a fantastic body. She would have included the Kyuubi as well, but when she did, the sentient mass of energy turned human had no idea what Kyuubi was talking about and would just stare at her with a blank expression on her face. No, I don't mean that. Well, I Naruto stammered as his face flushed, then glared at the laughing sword spirit, saying, You know what I mean. The sword spirit would frequently tease the 12-year-old boy because he reacted like an innocent little boy. Kyuubi said, You can make it bigger like what I can do, but other than removing the segments on the handle you can't make it any lighter. She shook her head and stopped laughing. Holding the decapitating carving knife up with some difficulty, Naruto sighed and scratched the back of his head, saying, I hope I grow into this thing's size then. Will you two please refrain from doing this? I'm attempting to go to sleep. The Kyuubi no Yoko lay there in all her nude glory, in the same position as she would in her fox form, her breasts mash up against the floor in a rather attractive way, and two heads turned toward the voice until one suddenly turned red and turned away, while the other smirked with amusement. Kyuubi waved a smile and said, Hello, Kyuubi-san. To the now awake Kyuubi, have your breasts increased in size? No, they haven't. The Kyuubi scowled. You keep asking me that, but why? No reason. With his eyes screwed shut, Naruto turned to face the Kyuubi and said, Will you please put on some clothes? Try wrapping your tails around yourself, or at least do that. HMPH. I don't understand why you insist on me wearing these restricting things you humans call cloths. The humanized Biju sneered, wrapping her tails around her like a blanket. These breasts. Maybe the reason why males and some females of your species find them attractive. I suppose people would be more worried about me destroying my breasts than covering my skin because my fox form lacked them. Now that he can look the Kyuubi in the eye without getting eyeful of other things, Naruto noted, technically your skin was covered in your human form because of your fur. The Kyuubi complained, then placed her head on her arms and closed her eyes, saying, I suppose. Naruto turned to face Kyuubi, who was wearing a strangely reflective expression. What is it? Before the sword spirit opened her mouth, Kyuubi narrowed her eyes, giving Naruto the impression that something might be amiss with the Kyuubi. I'm sure her breasts are larger than the last time we were here, Naruto said. What do you think of them, having seen them? Naruto then turned to face Palm and wondered if he was automatically a pervert because he had an exhibitionist and a pervert in his mind. I think it probably did, he concluded the following day. When he talked about his family, not in a female sense, after all, the other FIC is the one where Sasuke is female. Naruto suddenly stopped wondering where that thought came from before deciding to consult his tenants on what to do. He was bored and walking down the street when he couldn't find Sakura. Kakashi was off doing whatever it was he did in his free time, likely reading porn. And it was Sasuke's time of the month. He unblocked the mental link and heard something he would have preferred not to. Let me touch your boobs, was heard, accompanied by what sounded like a fight. Sword spirit, keep your hands away from me. What's wrong with you? Your boobs have grown larger. I know they did. Let me touch them now. Leave MKYAAA. After blocking the mental link, Naruto pushed the memory of Kyuubi's Kya ing to the back of his mind, along with his 11th birthday and the incident when Sasuke accidentally got drunk and copied Naruto's sexy jutsu with his Sharingan before attempting to. Naruto slipped into the puddle of water in front of him and fell face first because he was too preoccupied with his mental filing to notice it. Into the breasts of someone at about the same time, the Hokage Tower. I welcome you to Konoha. Arakage Dono, a very muscular, dark-skinned man with cropped blonde hair sat in a chair in front of Sarutobi Hiruzen, who remarked, I do think this is the first time we have actually met face to face. Thank you for letting me attend the Chunin exams, Hokage Dono. I am aware that my late father's and his council's belligerence has caused strained relations between our villages. Fortunately, I had the justification I needed to finally eject them from their seats because of the Kumo incident. I do, however, hope that bringing Kumo's 2 Jinchuriki is okay with you. I hope the other could finally meet her fiancé, and I consider one of them to be my own brother. She has been incredibly thrilled to meet him, Ace said, bowing briefly. I fully comprehend Jinchuriki from Konoha is like a grandson to me, and I would feel the same way. I believe he has been eager to meet his fiancé as well. There were a few silent moments. You haven't informed him, then? With a drop of perspiration, Ace said. Have you informed her? Sarutobi retorted. Nope, I replied without any remorse at all. Back alongside Naruto. Time appeared to stop, but Naruto's mind kept gathering information even though he was motionless. He mentioned things like the person in front of him had Jinchuriki-level reserves and smelled like catnip, and he also mentioned how soft her breasts and the blouse she was wearing were. Finally, he mentioned that her breasts were possibly a low D or high C cut and that she wasn't wearing a bra. He then cursed his godfather for being able to figure that out. So, do you want to remove your face from my breasts? A frustrated voice spoke up above him. Naruto had no idea why. Perhaps it was puberty finally taking hold, as the Kyuubi had suggested. Perhaps he was still in a daze from nearly falling. Perhaps his godfather's presence in the village corrupted him. Or perhaps he was simply expressing his thoughts aloud, but instead of saying something like, yes, I am so sorry, he said this. Not at all, you have really soft breasts. You could hear a pin drop in the engulfing silence. Before he heard a scream and a clawed hand slapped him across the face, scratching him and sending him into a nearby stall, Naruto could only think, what in the hell? Wow, Yugito wasn't a little harsh. He was only a child. To the side of the steaming Jonin, Killer Bee rapped. She spun around and glared at the Hachibi Jinchuriki Yugito, who was blushing slightly. Shut up, B. She said he had the audacity to say they were soft in addition to jamming his face into my chest. In his defense, he slipped and fell into your breasts and they do look soft. Omoi, who had been trying to keep himself as small as possible behind Samui, decided to stick his head out. Samui simply shook her head while Omoi dug his own grave. A hand emerged from beneath the rubble, and a voice said, ow. From the wrecked cart the boy appeared to be unharmed, save for 4 claw marks on his cheek. Here, little guy, B said, stepping over to assist the poor kid, whose nails hurt from all the slaps from Yugito. Don't be shy, I know those who are hurt. As Naruto was helped out of the rubble, he said, thanks for the help, weird rapping Oji-san. The Kumo Nin, minus Killer B, all perspired at the boy's name for B. Are you okay, kid? Do you require transportation to a hospital or another location? Ignoring Karui stifling Omoi behind her, Samui yelled. Simultaneously, Naruto's eyes noticed the plates on the shinobi's headbands and he smudged the blood in his cheek to reveal perfectly healed skin. Nah, I'm fine. As he flipped back and assumed a stance with a giant sword appearing in his right hand, Naruto's eyes appeared to flash, and both of the Kumo Jinchuriki's eyes widened simultaneously. Kyuubi. A voice reverberated within Killer B's mind. Yo, what do you mean? I didn't recognize it at first because it seemed to have changed somehow and it's a lot stronger than before, but now that I'm paying attention, that's definitely the Kyuubi's chakra. Yugito's mind was having a similar conversation at the same time. Kyuubi Oni-sama. What? Kyuubi Oni-sama is here. Even though her chakra feels different, I can still identify her. Even though the years had gone by, Naruto still recalled his first encounter with a Kumo shinobi all those years ago, and he was growling and appeared to be seconds away from attempting to decapitate everyone in front of him with the enormous butcher knife in his right hand. Killer B was perplexed by the seemingly kind boy's sudden hostility, asking, Yo Hachibi, what's going on with 9-0? You idiot, Kumo attempted to kidnap him 9 years ago. We were forced to sign a peace treaty with Konoha because of this. I see, he must not have heard about the alliance with Kumo, Killer B thought, not rapping because he knew how serious it was. B held his hands up in a placating gesture and tried to give his best comforting smile. Hey there, we don't mean no harm, B said, Clarifying the situation, childhood trauma was undoubtedly something you didn't get over for a long time. I can infer from your response that you were unaware of the Kumo Konoha peace treaty. We're not here to cause you harm. The boy appeared to be about to try to jump on them in the middle of the road, which only made Naruto more agitated. How can I trust you? There were a few moments of silence before Killer Bee said, only a sacrifice would know what it feels like to be one. He put his hands down and appeared to think for a moment, his face turning neutral. Before his posture relaxed, Naruto's eyes widened briefly. So you two are, he said. Before they both nodded, the Hachibi and Nibi Jinchuriki exchanged glances. Oh, you must be here for the Chunin exams. My bad. How about I show you around the village to make it up to you guys? Naruto sighed, scratching the back of his head and dispelling his sword. Naruto said, wearing a warm smile. Sure, why not? Shrugged the Nibi Jinchuriki. I have nothing to do but ask that you keep your hands off of me. Before he leapt off, Killer Bee rapped, sorry, I go check in with my bro, maybe some other time yo. Before she and Karui vanished in a lightning shunshin, Samui held up a severely battered and swollen Omoi and said, and we have to take this fool to a hospital before he bleeds out. Heh, looks like it's just you and me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about earlier, Naruto said, turning to face the cat-like girl who was still glaring at him. I genuinely have no idea what went on there. That was a lie. He was aware of what was going on, which was that almost every adult in his life was a pervert. Yugito seemed to stop glaring at him after that. All right, just make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay. Naruto nodded, and the two of them set out to explore Konoha's sights. Yo, how's it going, bro? I heard someone land behind him as he was leaving the Hokage tower, and it was his brother, based on the terrible rapping. So, where are Yugito and your team? The Raikage, accustomed to B's antics, inquired. The poor boy irritated Karui with a perverted joke he came up with while my teams were in the hospital getting Omoi patched as he walked with his brother. B rapped. Kitty Cat is seeing the sights with 9-0. Hope they don't cause too much trouble yo. He then pulled out a small book and wrote in it, saying, by the way bro, are you going to inform Yugito of her engagement? Of course. The Raikage coughed angrily. I'm just waiting for the right time. Despite being the Raikage, it had still received his share of nail-enhanced slaps from Yugito, but he wasn't afraid of Nibi Jinchuriki's response when she revealed she had a fiancé. Not at all. The tour had begun fairly normally, with Naruto showing Yugito around the village and telling her about the best restaurants, run by shinobi who didn't show any bias towards him because he was a Jinchuriki, of course, before they became stuck in their current position. What the hell is going on? Naruto thought as he was trapped under Yugito's nude body. Around 10 minutes prior, after showing Yugito around the town and getting lunch, Yugito asked if Konoha had any good onsens where she could unwind as they entered. Naruto pointed out that the men's side was closed for maintenance. Naruto shrugged and was about to go tell Yugito that he was leaving when he heard a voice interrupt. And this is the best onsen in Konoha. Naruto-chan. How have you been? It's been a long time. One of the few civilians in the village that Naruto liked was Madame Yukari, a retired shinobi, who said, since Naruto would always bust his godfather when he was peeping on the woman's side, and because she had known both of his parents and instantly recognized the boy when he had come in with the Uchihas one day, she said. Ah, Yukari Obaken. I'm doing fine, just unwinding a little before the Chunin exams, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. The male side is closed, so I was about to go home. Naruto-chan, don't worry about it. Why don't you just choose the female side? What? But I can't. There is already someone in there. Naruto blushed profusely at once. Don't worry about it, Naruto-chan. If they call you a pervert, I'll vouch for you, the elderly woman said, dismissing his worries. Also, I'm willing to wager that nobody will be attending today. But, despite his objections, Madame Yukari shoved him into the women's section of the onsen. When she finally stopped to consider it, she realized that coming to Konoha was the first time she had truly taken a break in a long time. Many people aren't already jonin by the time they are 16, and when you add in the fact that she had to train to control her Biju's chakra, you end up with someone who essentially has no personal life. Something her Biju made sure to remind her of several times while she was with Naruto. Ah, this is so nice, Yugito thought as she relaxed in hot water. I'm coming in, A feeble voice spoke from the doorway, revealing Naruto with his seal prominently displayed on his stomach and a towel wrapped around his waist. Why are you in this place? Yugito said, covering her chest in a quick reaction. Comedic tears streamed down Naruto's eyes as he said, I was going to go back home since the male side is not available, but the lady that owns the place knows me and told me that it was fine if I came over to this side before she pushed me in. Yugito sighed, unable to really label him a pervert because the boy appeared to be only 12 years old based on her observations of the town. Naruto knew all the people who were kind to him personally, and the woman who ran this onsen was most likely no exception. Fine, just don't look in my direction. After nodding, Naruto entered and bowed his head slightly. Closing his eyes, Yugito saw that the boy's seal was staying in place for a while. Hey Naruto? Why isn't your stomach's seal disappearing? I believe that when we are not using chakra, they should turn invisible. My eyes are to blame for that. Do you recall how the student was surrounded by those Tomo? Indeed, how about it? My eyes come from a dojutsu bloodline known as the Sharingan. My chakra is continuously being depleted by mine, which are implanted and not natural. Yugito nodded. I was wondering what they did with all of those special eyes of theirs. She and almost everyone else on the elemental nations had heard about the Uchiha massacre. No, there are only 3 people in Konoha, including myself, who have the Sharingan, scowled Naruto. The Sharingan consumes so much chakra that only those with reserves the size of Biju could sustain 2 of them throughout the day despite having just 1. My sensei most likely possesses more chakra than the Hokage at the moment. How about the third individual? His is Nat. Naruto's attention was interrupted when he heard footsteps and detected multiple chakra signatures, all of which were pointing toward the female area of the hot springs. His eyes opened in a panic, and he attempted to conceal the words, "Shit. Kunoichi are on the way. They will kill me or worse if they discover me here." What could be more terrible than taking your life? Yugito raised an eyebrow in question. I was 7 years old the last time I was caught in the female baths, and that was because I was here with my adopted mother, Naruto said. Feeling a chill go down his spine, Yugito couldn't help but chuckle at the horrified expression on Naruto's face as the kunoichi started to pour in. They were suffocating me and gushing about how cute I was. Yugito shook her head and sighed, saying, "Come over here and hide behind me." What? With a flushed face, Naruto said. Yugito smiled amusedly and said, "It's either that or marshmallow hell." Now that she had a good look at the boy, he seemed kind of cute. As the kunoichi started to arrive, Naruto hid behind Yugito and grumbled, still blushing to his ears. The present moment, in an attempt to find a more comfortable position, Naruto shifted his shoulder, but Yugito's low, throaty moan was too much for the 12-year-old, and he fell unconscious with blood streaming from his nose. Yugito ended up sitting on Naruto's shoulder due to the fact that he was running out of air and had to hide underwater because his bright red hair was so obvious. Not far from the onsen, what he would do to lie in those heavenly pillows that Naruto was currently being smothered in as the females in the onsen fussed over the unconscious boy. Jiraiya couldn't help but cry manly tears as the naked kunoichi fussed over his unconscious godson. Unlike him, who was brutally beaten when caught in a perverted situation, Naruto was typically treated like a victim of the situation. Konoha Hospital the following day. What hit me? The last thing Naruto remembered was entering the onsen and waking up to a white ceiling based on the antiseptic odor. He was in the hospital. Remembering what had happened before he lost consciousness, Naruto turned a deep red, and he wrote down that he would apologize to Yugito later. He turned to face the other person in the room and asked, "Sasuke, what are you doing here?" "You've been unconscious for a day," said the boy with the duck hair, grunting. "The Chunin exams are the day before." Naruto nodded and said, "I'll go change. Getting out of bed, will you meet at the gate?" After nodding, Sasuke, dressed entirely in black, stood up. Naruto's room in the Uchiha district. Naruto took off his hospital gown and slipped on a black sweater and pants. Tying his headband around his neck, Naruto looked at the items on his dresser. First was a picture of 5 people, his adopted family. The second was a tri-pronged kunai. When he had figured out the identity of his father, he had asked the Sandame for a memento for his room. The Sandame gave him one of his father's infamous Hiraishin kunai. When he asked the old man if it was okay to give someone like him something so important, Sarutobi just laughed, telling him that the Hiraishin wasn't his father's original jutsu and all Hiraishin seals are unique to each user. Naruto had placed a preservation seal on the kunai so it could always be something to remember his father by, as he no longer had the Yondaime's sky blue eyes. The third item was a Hunter Nin mask, a reminder of his weakness during the wave mission. Leaving the compound, Naruto saw Sasuke with 2 bundles of flowers. Nodding, Sasuke handed one to Naruto and they both set out to the Konoha graveyard. Konoha Cemetery. Naruto and Sasuke had visited the graves of Uchiha Makoto and Uchiha Fugaku before their graduation exams, before their first C rank, and now before the Chunin exams, so it was almost a ritual for them to do so before something significant. Sasuke laid down his bouquet of flowers before departing, and Naruto went to see his other parents. Beyond the Uzumaki storehouse in the village, Naruto sat cross-legged with his hands on his feet and said, "Hey, Tu-san, Ka-san." He had made this little shrine a few months ago after discovering who his father was, and he was the only one who knew about it. Not even Sasuke had been here. Sorry I hadn't really visited, but I didn't really know who my father was until a few months ago, and it seemed kind of rude to only have a shrine for my mother and not my father. Hey, Naruto said, holding the bundle of flowers he was holding between the pictures. Ka-san, it looks like I got your red hair. People who knew you said I also got your personality. Don't worry about our clan because I plan on rebuilding the Uzumaki clan alongside the Uchiha clan. Dadbeo, Naruto said, closing his eyes and lowering his head slightly as he considered his next words. Ah, that's right, I forgot, for some reason the Uchihas all had to be killed, including Makoto Kasen and Fugaku Tucson. They adopted me when I was 3 years old, Naruto said, clenching his fist before appearing to wilt. Tucson, I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's great that my father was so famous, so I guess I have a lot to live up to, you know. I'll do my best to make you and Ka-san proud. As the day gradually turned to night, Naruto sat there with his eyes closed, ready to leave when he sensed a change in the atmosphere. His eyes snapped alert, and he jumped up to start looking around before hearing a ghostly voice. It has been a while since one of your clan has been in my presence, young Uzumaki. The following day, with the exams starting in an hour and Sasuke and Sakura unable to locate Naruto, they were impatiently waiting in front of the Chunin exam building. It wasn't like Naruto to be late to anything, and he hadn't come home last night, so Sakura gritted her teeth and said, I swear to God, if that idiot is late, I'm going to pound him into next week. Sasuke narrowed his eyes in agreement. I apologize for being late, guys, a distant voice said, and Sakura and Sasuke turned to see Naruto running toward them, his form in hand, looking a little pale. Sakura placed her hands on her hips and spun around to face the redhead, asking, Where were you? We searched everywhere for you, but it seems that you didn't return home last night either. Naruto laughed, scratched the back of his head, and told his team that he didn't get as much sleep as he would have liked to the night before. He had small bags under his eyes. For now, it is irrelevant, we have to go take the exams right now. Are you prepared, Naruto? Sasuke inquired. Yes, I'm prepared. As Naruto and his group entered the building, Naruto apologized, saying, I just overslept. Naruto's right arm had faded seals, but neither Sakura nor Sasuke saw them. Wow, everyone here is kinda weak. The gathering room seemed to reverberate with this statement. People looked at the red-haired boy who had said it, who was standing with a black-haired boy and a girl with pink hair. You're right, it should be a clean sweep. As the individuals in the room attempted to convey their intent to kill, the black-haired one appeared to smirk. Now that Naruto and Sasuke-kun have stopped causing trouble for the other contestants, their villages must have had good reason to send cannon folders to the Chunin exams. Many teams gritted their teeth and turned away, but many others wanted a fight. However, the rather insane looks that Naruto and Sasuke were giving them, complete with glowing Sharingan, caused them to reconsider. The pink-haired one's voice made it impossible not to believe her. They'd trained for 2 months, only able to spar, and now Naruto and Sasuke wanted to let loose, and even Sakura felt a little stir-crazy. This was the plan that Naruto had hatched at the last minute, essentially to annoy all the other competitors so that they would come to them. That's quite the bold declaration, Naruto-san. As Naruto turned his head, he saw the smirking face of Hyuga Neji. Sakura had been training with them for the past 2 months, getting her taijutsu to a fairly good level, and they both knew each other fairly well because Tenten was one of the few people in the orphanage who would stand up for him before he was adopted. He also trained with her a lot to improve his aim with his chakra weapons when they were little, and because they had met Neji, who was a bit of a fatalist but otherwise a pretty cool guy. How are things going, Panda-chan? Hello. Neji. Naruto nodded to Neji and waved to Tenten as he approached. Tenten crossed her arms and grinned, saying, Fishcake-kun, everything is going great. That your teams are here surprises me. Guy-sensei requested that we hold off on entering for at least a year. Naruto grinned and remarked, I guess my team's just that much more awesome than yours. Where are bushy brows, then? By now, he's usually running around and saying things about youth, Naruto remarked, observing that their small group was noticeably lacking in eyebrows. I followed your suggestion and put him to the test to see who could remain silent about youth for the longest. Neji pointed to Ali, who appeared to be writhing on the ground with his hands covering his mouth, and said, Lee's over there. You just lost the challenge, didn't you? Naruto nodded and started talking to Neji and Tenten about their activities since he graduated, saying, I'm allowed to tell other people. Kun Sasuke. When the other half of his most obnoxious academy fangirls ran up to try to glomp him, Sasuke couldn't help but groan and sidestep the fangirl's tackling hug, sending her to the ground. Hey Shikamaru, Choji, so you're also involved in this? Both the eternally happy and the eternally lazy boy nodded, and Sasuke saw that Naruto was staring at him in a daze. Hey Naruto, are you sure you're okay? Rubbing his forehead, Naruto saw Hinata and her team and waved them over after blinking a few times before shaking his head and saying, "Yeah, I'm fine, don't worry." As Team 8 approached, Shino appeared to slow down, as if he wanted to stop, and Akamaru started to bark and try to get away from Naruto, who arched an eyebrow at the odd behavior. "What's wrong, guys?" Shino apologized to Naruto-san, "But it appears that the chakra you typically release is too strong for my hives, so I will need to maintain a safe distance." Kiba nodded. Agreeing with Akamaru, "It feels like someone poured ammonia on your chakra's nose." "Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I really trained my bloodline a lot during the last few months, so my chakra probably got stronger." Naruto laughed. Scratching the back of his head, he turned to see that Hinata appeared to be trouble-free. "So are you okay, Hinata-chan?" "Of course, Naruto-kun." The Hyuga heiress laughed. "But I have to admit that a few months ago, your chakra was light blue with a hint of purple. It is now primarily deep blue with purple undertones. For your chakra to compress so much, you must have been training hard." "Yes, for the past 2 months, Team 7 has essentially done nothing but train. We will undoubtedly ace the tests, Datbeo." With a fist pump, Naruto said. "You rookies should quiet down before you draw too much attention to you." "Hey, my name is Kabuto," he said, wearing glasses, a purple high-color shirt with a white sash, and gray hair in a ponytail. 9 pairs of eyes turned to the speaker. "Since you're new, you shouldn't attract too much attention to yourselves. The Chunin examinations are very important." "You're not a rookie, are you?" Sasuke raised an eyebrow and asked, "There's something fishy about this guy, is he lying?" Sasuke subtly gestured for Naruto to keep his mind's eye of the Kagura on Kabuto's chakra. "Nope," Kabuto said, embarrassed, scratching the back of his head. "This is actually my 6th attempt." Sasuke tried not to show his suspicions by saying, "I see, so the exams must be pretty hard, huh? Or maybe he just sucks." Was Naruto's smile. He sensed the flux of Kabuto's chakra, which informed him that the alleged Konoha genin was becoming irate. It also gave Naruto a brief glimpse of Kabuto's true chakra, which was easily at Jonin level reserves. Naruto stored that information for later use. "I'm not that horrible, in my opinion." The light glinted menacingly off Kabuto's glasses as he said, "You know, the Chunin exams are pretty rough." Before his thoughts were cut off, Naruto thought, "It doesn't look like he's lying. Watch out, Naruto, he is not necessarily telling the truth just because he is not lying." "Q-chan, what do you mean, Q-chan?" "Yes, it does sound CU. No, I am first reduced to this human form by you, the sword spirit, then won't keep her damned hands off of me when you insist that I cover myself in your presence. Neither will you call me Q-chan. Nor will I force you to suffer from the monthly Rikudo forsaken cramps I get. Do we understand? Are we clear?" The Kyuubi's voice seemed to reverberate throughout his ears, despite the fact that it was only in his head. Even though it was in his head, Naruto's voice seemed to tremble as he said, "Hi Kyubisama." The Kyuubi had been acting a little grumpy every month, though he honestly didn't know why. Well, as I mentioned earlier, someone is not necessarily telling the truth just because they aren't lying in reality. It is quite easy to persuade someone to believe something by providing them with only a portion of the facts and then allowing them to form an incorrect assumption. What do you mean? For instance, if I were to inform someone that you were thinking about 2 women when you actually have 2 females in your head, they would think you were a pervert. That was just superfluous, felt necessary to me. As he returned his attention to the outside world, he heard Kabuto mention having information about people on cards. Kabuto smiled and asked, "So is there anyone you want to know about?" "Sabaku no Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto," Neji said. Before turning it over, Kabuto directed chakra to a card on top and remarked, "You already know their names, that's no fun. Let's see. Sabaku no Gaara teammates are his siblings Sabaku no Damari and Sabaku no Kankuro. He has 8 C rank and 1 B rank missions. Apparently he didn't get a scratch on him during any of his missions. I don't have too much on him since he isn't from Konoha." After placing the card at the bottom of the deck, Kabuto flipped the top card after channeling chakra. Okay, next is Uchiha Sasuke. He is the last of the near-extinct Uchiha clan. Teammates are his adopted brother Uchiha Uzumaki. Naruto and Haruno Sakura is noted to have awakened his Sharingan before the academy, but the exact time is unknown. Said to have high Chunin level Nin and Taijutsu with Chunin level Genjutsu and average chakra reserves. He has 12 D rank missions and 1 S rank mission. Kabuto sighed. Naruto crossed his arms and boasted, "If you think Sasuke is impressive, you should check out my card." With a sly smile, Kabuto placed Sasuke's card on the bottom of the deck and said, "I think I'll do that." He then drew a card while channeling chakra. Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto. He is the only known member of the near-extinct Uzumaki clan and has all three of the known Uzumaki bloodlines. Teammates are his brother Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sasuke. He possesses two implanted Sharingan with unknown origins, said to have Chunin-level Nin and Taijutsu with no known skill in Genjutsu. Has the largest chakra reserves recorded in the history of Konoha. A voice called out, "Quiet down, maggots," as several puffs of smoke appeared in front of the room, breaking the oppressive silence. A line of Chunin and Morino Ibiki, the head of the I&T division, were visible as the smoke cleared. "I am Morino Ibiki, the proctor for the first exams. All of you get your sorry asses in a single file line before I toss them out of here. We will be drawing tickets for you seats before we begin the first part of the exams." The Chunin aspirants formed a line and took their seats gradually. Once everyone was seated, the proctors started distributing the exams, placing them face down on the desk. Ibiki cleared his throat to draw everyone's attention after everyone had received a paper. "Alright, maggots, here's how things are going to go. Listen closely because I will not repeat myself in front of you as a 9-question test. Each question is worth 1 point. By the end of the exams your team must have a total of 5 points. If you are caught cheating, then you will lose 2 points, and if anyone on your team's score drops below 0, your team will be removed from the exam, and finally if anyone on your team scores 0 points, then your team is automatically disqualified. You have 50 minutes to complete the exam, and after the 50 minutes is up I will ask the 10th question. If you do not get the 10th question correct, then you will automatically fail the exam. You may now begin." After turning the paper over, Naruto started reading the questions. No genin would be able to answer any of them unless they were incredibly intelligent. Naruto frowned and was about to copy someone else's responses with his Sharingan, just like he had witnessed Sasuke doing. When the answers abruptly came into view, Naruto smirked as he copied all of the answers and turned his answer sheet over before turning in for the night. After 40 minutes, as Ibiki announced that he was going to ask the 10th question, Naruto yawned and blinked the sleep from his eyes. The sadist smiled at the determined expressions on the faces of the Chunin hopefuls when he broke them. It would be even more delightful. "Ah yes, I forgot to mention one thing about this last question. Those that fail will never be able to take the Chunin exams and will be stuck as a genin for the rest of their lives." Shouts of denial and the usual complaints were heard. "That's just too bad you got me as your exam proctor. Here I am, God." Ibiki stood there, soaking it all in. The sadist smiled as the teams started to leave the room one by one. About 20 teams remained in the end. "All right, anyone else quitting?" A second glance around the room revealed that every team that was left was staying. "I must be slipping. 20 teams. Then for all the remaining teams, why? We pass." When the red-headed boy with his chin on the table interrupted him, Ibiki slowly turned his head and raised an eyebrow at him. "And what makes you say that? For all you know, I could have just been about to fail all of you." I believe that boy's name was Uchiha Naruto. The boy's eyes turned upside down as he smiled, saying, "If I'm not willing to risk my career for a simple test." The boy with the black hair concluded with a smirk, "Then how would I able to risk my life on a mission?" A girl with pink hair smiled and said, "Isn't that right, Morino-san?" Ibiki was interrupted when something crashed through the window. "If my memory serves me correctly, those brats are Kakashi's. How interesting." The head of the I&T department grinned and said, "That's right, those brats right there hit the nail on the head. Sometimes a mission will be vital to your village and you will have to risk your lives when lives and the safety of your village are at stake. Failure is not an option. This exam wasn't meant to test your knowledge, it was meant to test your resolve. When failure means death, do you crack or will you rise to the challenge? I am proud to say that all of you paw." None of the genin in the room knew that it was the adorable proctor of the second exam, but the majority of us did. Therefore, it appeared to Team 7 that a hostile village might launch an attack. Ibiki and the other Chunin proctors couldn't contain their laughter when Naruto and Sasuke jumped out of their seats to kick the potentially hazardous object back out the window. Naruto couldn't help but wonder, did we miss something here?" as he saw the intimidating proctor of the first exam erupting in laughter. Yes, you did, brat." When everyone in the room looked toward the window, they saw Mitarashi Anko leaning in with a tick mark on her head and a slightly worse for wear. "That was supposed to be my super cool entrance, you know, and I'm the proctor for the second exam." "In our defense," Sasuke said slowly, "had there been a bundle of explosive tags we would all have been dead." Naruto and Sasuke both winced. The boy was right, and everyone in the room blinked. There would have been severe political repercussions if that had been an attack by an enemy village. Anko merely laughed and scratched the back of her head as the proctors started to glare at her. The examinees simply exchanged glances before heading to the next testing area after the strange woman left. "Alright, Hey, anyway, the next exams are at Training Ground 44, be there in 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, Training Ground 44 was reached. After arriving at the site of the second exam with his team, Naruto exclaimed, "Those are some big-ass trees, with wide eyes. Those trees are resilient enough to endure my typical fire release, but I'll need to exercise caution when using Amaterasu, illuminating heaven, to avoid destroying the entire forest." Sasuke reflected. Alright, maggots. Training Ground 44, also referred to as the Forest of Death, is my home away from home. Over the brief time jump, Anko regained some of her lost pride and declared, "This is where the second exam will be held. Okay. I need you all to sign these forms or you won't be able to continue with the Chunin exams," the scantily clad person said, drawing out a stack of papers from somewhere. "According to these forms, Konoha has no control over what occurs, so it's awful to be you if you pass away." A certain Kusa Nin was staring at Team 7 and licking her lips as Anko started to distribute the forms. The woman smiled after gathering the forms from all of the participants. "All right. Let me tell you a little more about the second exam. Either a scroll of heaven or a scroll of earth will be distributed to each team within 5 days. You must make it to the heart of the Forest of Death with both scrolls and all 3 of your team members still alive." 5 days? How are we going to provide food? Choji cried out. "The forest is full of edible plants and animals. We'll give you a gate number and distribute the scrolls. We will start the test after each team has been given a gate and a scroll." Naruto was chatting with his teammates as the teams waited to get their gate number and scroll. "So, what are your thoughts?" In addition to the fact that the majority of the teams they had incited at the start of the Chunin exams had already been eliminated, Naruto stated that the exam's goal was clearly to at least cut the number of participants in half. "I think this exam should be pretty easy for us," Sakura said, crossing her arms. "We can use Naruto's sensor to scout people, so we should be safe unless there are some extremely powerful shinobi out to get us." Kusa Genin sneezed on the opposite side of the field. Both of Sasuke's teammates gave him strange looks when he said, "I think, what we should do is try to take out as many teams as we can before we enter the tower." "Why would we take that action?" did Naruto ask. "Consider it the purpose of this section of the test is to assess our ability to survive. Testing our resolve was the final step. Combat is likely to be the next test. However, based on my recollection of Itachi Ni's exam, Konoha typically promotes the final section to see people who are determined and know how to survive in the wild. You wouldn't travel all the way to Konoha from wherever you were coming from. Combat skills, ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu are what they want to see. They may have to hold a preliminary to weed out the weaker candidates if there are ultimately too many. However, wouldn't that be advantageous? More fights would give us more chances to show how strong we are," Naruto interrupted. "I don't think it will be that simple," said Sasuke, shaking his head. "The Chunin in this village do exhibit some leadership and strategic thinking, despite the fact that it may not always seem like it. That's what I believe the Chunin exam's last round will be about, your strategic planning as well as whether or not you win your matches." Even after he punched his fist into his palm, Naruto continued to smile and said, "But if we were to kick everyone's ass, I bet they would still promote us." With a sly smile, Sasuke grunted, "HN most likely." "How will we accomplish this, then? Do we have specific targets in mind, or will we be pursuing teams arbitrarily?" Sakura inquired. Sasuke placed a hand on his chin and closed his eyes, thinking, "Well, there were 12 people taking Itachi Ni's test. Since the Chunin exam's final round is essentially a demonstration of a village's strength, I believe we ought to track down the non-Konoha teams. Our village would appear to be very strong if Konoha shinobi were the only teams to advance to the final round of the Chunin exams. In addition, we already know the majority of our allies' skills, so we can at least relax a bit to improve their image." "All right, that's the strategy. I'm going to go get our Tibeo, or scroll." Sakura and Sasuke were left standing as Naruto said this before he hurried off to the Chunin and distributed the scrolls and gate numbers. Sakura said, "Hey Sasuke, you mentioned Itachi Ni earlier." With a sigh, Sasuke closed his eyes and said, "You know what, Naruto, and I never told you I witnessed Itachi Ni cry just before he departed on the night he massacred our clan." Sakura was shocked because, like most Konoha shinobi, she thought Itachi was just a psychopath who killed his clan, although she had discovered that Sasuke and Naruto had fabricated most of their personalities during the academy. She had always assumed that Sasuke's animosity toward his brother was genuine. Since then, me and Naruto have slowly began uncovering things that make me believe that Itachi Ni was right in killing our clan. The reason we trained so hard is so that when we finally confront him we can get our answers, and if we are strong enough, get our brother back. But the wave mission, that showed us that we weren't anywhere near strong enough. Sasuke said, clenching his fist as he looked down. The worst part is that we believe Itachi had to leave Konoha in part because he was and still is protecting us. Our lives are being held over Itachi's head by someone powerful enough or high enough in Konoha's system to make him avoid the house he loves. That's why we have to get strong. With a heaven scroll in hand, Sakura and Sasuke turned to face Naruto, who said, strong enough so that Itachi can come home. 3 sets of eyes, belonging to the Hidden Sound team, were watching Team 7 as they made their way to their assigned gate. So those are the ones Orochimaru-sama wants us to kill. The other pair of eyes, though, were far more menacing. Naruto-kun, Sakura-chan, Sasuke-kun, show me your power. Every team hurried into the Forest of Death as soon as the signal to begin was given. Inside the Death Forest, after entering the Forest of Death, 2 Aim Genin, Daisuke, and Hachiro were in a panic. Suddenly, a chain emerged from the darkness and seized their third member, Aoi, who was holding the scroll, but they were unable to pass without the entire team. They returned to find Aoi unconscious at the feet of a red-haired boy. Hand over your scroll or I'll take it by force. How about this? You tell us where your team is so we can take their scroll and we won't beat the crap out of you. Daisuke, confident in his ability to defeat the brat, said, laughing at the boy, who must have taken Aoi down with a surprise attack. The boy appeared to be 5 or 6 years younger than them. The boy simply smiled, his strange eyes glowing, and said, I'd like to see you try. You little brat, what was that? It appears that you will need to learn a lesson from us. With a kunai in hand, Daisuke charged at the boy, but before he could get to him, a huge skeletal hand seized him and slammed him against the ground, shattering it and instantly knocking him unconscious. The boy was now encircled by what appeared to be a ghostly skeletal rib cage with one arm on the left side and a gold glow. Hachiro dropped his kunai and started to back away in terror. He turned to try to flee, but a chain wrapped around his ankle and started to pull him back. Not so quick, please let me know the location of the scroll. Hey there baby, Isao said with a perverted sneer on his face, why don't you come over here so we can show you a good time? Ichiro, Isao, and Mikio, Genin from Kusa, were smiling. They had discovered a lone kunoichi with pink hair in the forest and they wouldn't be held responsible for anything that happened. I'm sorry, but I have to meet up with my team soon, the girl said with a simple smile. Could you please give your scroll to me? I'm sorry, but I don't mind giving you something else, Ichiro said with a loud laugh. The 3 Kusa Genin felt threatened as the girl's attitude appeared to shift. Okay, they said. Time seemed to slow down as she spun and landed a roundhouse kick on Ichiro's jaw, shattering it and sending him flying. I tried to negotiate. The girl vanished from Ichiro's view in a flash of speed. He heard a loud crack and the sound of bark splintering, and when he turned, he saw Isao half buried in a tree trunk and the kunoichi with her arms still out from the punch. The kunoichi cracked her knuckles and stomped just short of Mikio's family jewels, causing the ground to be cratered. The girl turned to Mikio, who had fallen to his ass and wet his pants. Although she was still grinning, her posture suggested that she would have no trouble breaking him, just as she had just done to his teammates. Now, could you tell me the location of your scroll? Osamu, Rokuro and Shigeo, Genin from AIM, were setting up their camp when they felt a spike of heat from their left. That was their only warning before an arrow made of flame landed in the center of their camp and exploded. Shigeo was instantly knocked out while Osamu and Rokuro only sustained minor burns. Through the smoke a figure charged at Osamu, and even though Osamu had the size advantage, he was injured and his assailant was much faster than him. He swung at his opponent and missed before the figure in the smoke disappeared. He felt a hard blow on the back of his head before he lost consciousness. When the smoke cleared, Rokuro saw their assailant, a black-haired boy with odd red eyes, standing over the unconscious form of Osamu. Rokuro palmed 2 kunai and charged at the boy, swinging one of his kunai before it was blocked by a sword seemingly made of pure flame. The sword cut clean though his kunai and into his shoulder, and the wound was instantly cauterized. Rokuro fell to the ground clutching his shoulder and screaming in agony. Tell me where your scroll is, uncovering in the Death Forest. What scrolls are we in possession of? Sasuke and Sakura mimicked Naruto's statement as he dropped the scroll he had received from the AIM team to the ground. It appears that Konoha shared your thought. Sasuke, the Kusa team had a Heaven Scroll, while the 2 teams we attacked that weren't Konoha allies each had Earth Scrolls, Sakura said. Yes, you keep 1 pair, Naruto. Sakura and I will take 1 Earthly Scroll and 1 Heavenly Scroll. Naruto summoned his Susanoo, grabbed Sakura and Sasuke, and braced himself as a huge gust of wind ripped into the clearing as Team 7 was about to depart after distributing the scrolls and sensing a large flux of wind-natured chakra coming directly at them. How are you all doing? When Sasuke and Sakura were freed by his Susanoo, Naruto said, uncrossing his arms. A female shinobi with long black hair and an incredibly long tongue entered the clearing, and both Sakura and Sasuke nodded. Ku, how impressive, Naruto-kun. Kakashi was drinking tea at a dango hut when he noticed a crack in his teacup as he reached for it. That can't be good, the strange Kusa shinobi blurted out. Ku, very impressive, Naruto-kun, with a long tongue that seemed to be shaking with excitement. I had meant to test each of you individually, but I suppose all three at once is fine too. Perhaps this is how Hanzo felt, the woman said, removing her straw hat as she took a step forward and released her deadly intent. With each step the Kusa shinobi took forward, Team 7 was unconsciously regressing. They had witnessed this degree of murderous intent from Hedan and Kakuzu, but this time they had Kakashi, Zabuza, and Haku, as well as plenty of time to get ready. You're obviously not a genin, who the hell are you and why are you here? Naruto said, clenching his teeth and resisting the urge to flee as quickly as possible. Naruto's resolve was strengthened when he saw the image of Haku's dying face flash through his mind. The woman laughed and said, you're correct. As for me, you can call me Orochimaru, but I'm not a genin. Orochimaru, the snake Sannin and one of the strongest shinobi in the world, ambushed the Chunin exams and broke in, which didn't give the three genin much comfort, but it did give them a small sense of security that the snake Sannin wasn't there to kill them. Team 7 took another step back almost simultaneously. Orochimaru grinned before vanishing in a flash of speed, saying, and as for why I'm here, I think I just told you. I'm here to test you. He produced the Kabikirabocho and slashed at the shinobi, who simply jumped back and regurgitated some strange long sword before lunging at Naruto, who grunted as the strange Kusa shinobi punched his Susanoo, cracking his ribcage. Sakura ducked under the shinobi's lung and gave him an uppercut in the stomach. At the moment when Sasuke and Sakura had regained their composure, Orochimaru was blasted upward before he righted herself and landed on a tree. Orochimaru himself was a bit of a tall order for their first time without any outside help, but they had to take off the training wheels at some point. The snake Sannin was the most dangerous of all the people who ambushed them during the Chunin exams. Got to pull out all the stops here, Sasuke thought. Sending chakra to his eyes, he jumped off the tree he was on just as it exploded in black flames. The man, beaming wildly, landed on another tree before charging at Sasuke with his sword outstretched, determined to see if his strength was any different from his brother's until Sakura's well-timed punch sent him flying again. Now, Naruto. Sakura repressed a wince as she felt her muscles being ripped to pieces before being instantly healed again from the regenerative chakra she was receiving from the black piercing on her ear. Kaimon, gate of opening. Open, she said before crossing her arms and closing her eyes. When the girl tried to fight him in a taijutsu match, Orochimaru smiled and pulled a snake from his sleeve to protect his sword. The snake Sannin then raised an arm to block the pink-haired girl's punch. And squirming as the girl's blow sliced right through his arm, sending him hurtling into the woods. Sakura's natural strength had increased dramatically during training with Guy and Lee. In addition to learning how to open the first 3 gates, she mentioned this to Naruto during a team meeting, and they devised a solution to the disadvantages of using the gates for her. She could only use the first gate for 15 minutes, the second gate for 5, and the third gate for 1, but Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto didn't initially intend to defeat the snake Sannin. When Orochimaru saw 3 giant blue Magatama bound by a thread of gold chakra flying at him, he opened his mouth to regurgitate a new form, revealing the more familiar appearance of the snake Sannin. Orochimaru quickly replaced his body with a mud clone, but he was unprepared for the shockwave that resulted from the Magatama's explosion. One of the Susanoo's techniques was the Yusaka Magatama, 8 slopes curved jewels, which Naruto had learned about on the tablet in the Naka Shrine over the past 2 months. Because his chakra was more powerful and dense than ordinary chakra, he was able to make his version more lethal. One of Naruto's Magatama was roughly the same as 3 explosive tags. Despite not being in the exact center of the impact like his mud clone, Orochimaru was close enough to be hit by the shockwave, which sent him flying. The snake Sannin regurgitated another body and cursed as he had to jump away to avoid an arrow made of black flames that exploded, engulfing parts of the forest in black flames. As he landed on a branch, Orochimaru noticed that Sakura was charging at him again. Since he didn't want to make the same mistake twice, he started dodging the pink-haired Kunoichi's shots with his snake style, which was based on speed and flexibility. While fighting Sakura, he noticed that the opening she left was covered by more concentrated black fire arrows that didn't explode, which essentially forced him to be on the defensive. He also noticed that the female member of Team 7 had 2 extra rings outside of her pupil. Orochimaru thought, where have I seen that before, and he turned his legs into a snake's bottom, slithering down the tree to get some breathing room. The snake Sannin cursed as he looked around, seeing that every tree was covered in black flames, and that a proctor or two would undoubtedly come check it out soon enough due to the amount of smoke coming from the area. Orochimaru saw another set of Magatama flying towards him, but he jumped away as the ground exploded, which was unfortunate because he was running out of time. The snake Sanin bit his thumb and attempted to rub it on his summoning tattoo on his arm, but he was caught in ninja wire, suspended in midair. Enten. Madoru. Ryu Kagetsuchi. Blaze release. Added tools of the Earthlord model, Dragon. The snake Sanin was quickly destroyed by a huge dragon head composed of black flame ninja wire that had melted completely, and completely charred and blackened dirt were visible when the 5 seconds of black fire steam dissipated. A shadow darted out from behind a tree, smashed a foot into Sasuke's side, breaking his ribs and sending him flying, causing his eyes to widen. As he got ready to commemorate the final Uchiha, Orochimaru swore if that last blow had struck, he would have been killed. It was a combination of body replacement, using his regurgitation jutsu with just his head, and calling forth a snake to deflect the attack for an additional second. Just as he reached out to stretch his neck, a falling Sakura turned him into paste, forcing him to leap back. The Kunoichi sent tens of snakes with blades emerging from their mouths at Sakura, knowing she couldn't dodge them or they would strike Sasuke behind her. I get tired of these games. Senichashu, Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. Open. Kaimon, Gate of Opening. Humon, Gate of Healing. Simon, Gate of Life. Shit, I have to use it. Sakura charged forward, tearing through the snakes with her fists glowing a dark pink. Roseo Metal, Cherry Blossom Blizzard. As she reached Orochimaru, Sakura started punching the snake Sanin as hard and quickly as she could, sending tiny pink energy specks flying in a miniature storm before landing a huge blow to the snake Sanin's stomach that sent him flying back. A much more subdued form of Guy's Morning Peacock was the Roseo Metal. Sakura's fists did not burn when she used the Roseo Metal. Instead, the cherry blossom effect was caused by energy flecks that bounced off of the object she struck. Even though it was slower, weaker, and much shorter, the pink-haired Kunoichi managed to finish with it. With 2 chakra sabers, Naruto leapt to the ground and said, "Sakura, go take Sasuke and get yourselves healed. I'll hold this guy off." Wide-eyed, Sasuke yelled, "What the hell are you talking about, Naruto?" Though she was on one knee, Sakura exclaimed, "Yeah, we're not going to leave you behind." "I'm not saying leave me behind, I'm saying let me hold him off until you and Sasuke are ready to fight again. Your muscles are basically shredded and Sasuke doesn't look much better." Sakura nodded, slipped an arm under Sasuke's arm, and leapt away, although it appeared as though she wanted to object. Naruto turned his head and squinted, saying, "Come out, I can sense that you're there." The clearing was filled with laughter. Grass mowing, long sword in hand, Orochimaru appeared to slither out of the black-flamed forest. Cuckoo, you do know that even if you delay me I will eventually catch up to them." Naruto covered his eyes with his hair and uttered, "I don't plan on delaying you." He looked up, revealing slit purple eyes with concentric rings and whiskered cheeks. I plan on killing you." 2 tails appeared from Naruto's lower back, and he bounded forward. His 2 chakra sabers clashed with Orochimaru before exploding and cracking, sending both fighters flying in opposite directions. The red head shot towards Orochimaru, who had regurgitated another body as the snake Sanin had fallen into the black flames, and Naruto flipped and pushed forward on a tree, sending it toppling back as he felt the 2-tailed chakra cloak forming. Naruto and Orochimaru clashed blades as he materialized the Kabikirabocho, decapitating carving knife, which was glowing an angry red. The long sword and the carving knife repeatedly clashed, sending sparks flying. The 2 fought among the forest of black flames in a nearly fleeting encounter. A 12-year-old boy would normally be easily subdued by an adult like Orochimaru, but the boy had 3 advantages. First, compared to the Kusanagi, the Kabikirabocho was noticeably heavier and larger. Second, the Kyuubi's primordial chakra was coursing through his veins. Third, the Rinnegan's enhanced chakra control enabled him to employ a modified form of the super strength technique used by Sakura and the Slug Sanin. Instead of using the exact control that their version employed, Naruto's version compressed massive amounts of chakra and released it with explosive force instead of an explosion, resembling a Bijudama, tailed beast sphere. The outcome was a distorted method that required roughly 100 times as much chakra as the one employed by Sakura and Tsunade. Naruto also possessed that much chakra, but because the snake Sanin wasn't delivering each of his blows directly, Orochimaru was able to match him blow for blow. Since Naruto was only 12 years old and lacked the body to stabilize his swings, the snake Sanin would parry his blows, allowing the force to bleed out. Orochimaru smiled as he deflected another of Naruto's blows, which all had the potential to cut him in 2. He could feel his bones groaning. Naruto, like the beast within him, would be an unstoppable force of nature in a few years. The snake Sannin made a decision at that moment, marking the Haruno and the Uchiha would be nice, but his boy was his primary target now. The snake Sannin extended the Kusanagi and lunged forward to parry one of Naruto's overhead swings. In order to block the extending sword, Naruto leapt back and called forth Susanoo's ribcage. Orochimaru yelled, "Sene Tajashu," many hidden shadow snake hands, before drawing his sword and hurling 4 enormous snakes at Naruto. Before spinning his sword and decapitating all 4 snakes, Naruto conjured up Susanoo's arms, each of which had an extra forearm that grasped the snakes. Naruto threw away the snake heads, spread out his Susanoo, and transformed a Chidori, 1,000 birds, into a long sword. Naruto leapt from his tree, which was engulfed in black flames, and swam at the smirking snake Sannin. As Naruto felt his body grow more numb, he winced and swung his Chidori long sword against the Kusanagi. He hadn't mastered the use of the Kyuubi's chakra, so prolonged use still caused him pain even after he released the reverse consumption seal. He had already consumed 80% of his chakra with his chakra burst technique. The Kyuubi's chakra dispersed as Naruto managed to match Orochimaru for 4 more blows before his arms went completely numb, causing him to drop his swords and fall to his knees. Orochimaru smirked as he drove the Kusanagi into Naruto's abdomen. Naruto felt his stomach explode with pain as he coughed up blood. The Kusanagi was now releasing poison into his stomach and bloodstream, and even though the Kyuubi's chakra would burn any poison out of his system, he still felt the effects first. Recalling a snake that had the curse seal in its venom sacs, the renegade Sannin had it bite Naruto on the neck before it slithered away. Ku. Very impressive, Naruto-kun. Not to mention those eyes of yours. Truly, given a few years you will become the next god of shinobi. With the proper guidance, of course, he said. My name is Orochimaru, young one. When this village shows its true colors, when you realize it has become nothing more than a sham, completely disregarding the reason for which it was built, come find me, and I will give you the power to protect that which you hold most dear. As Naruto slowly lost consciousness and collapsed face first to the ground, he could hardly hear Orochimaru's final words, which were replete with regret and sadness. A near total opposite of his previous tone of voice. When you finally see both sides of the leaf, come find me. Orochimaru noticed that the fire was approaching too closely as he gazed down at the unconscious red-haired boy. Orochimaru picked up the unconscious boy and leapt to a part of the forest that was safe from the black flames because the stab wound in his stomach had already healed. Orochimaru unwittingly brought up a memory from 12 years ago and laid the boy down gently. If something happens to us and Jiraiya-sensei can't fulfill his duty to both the village and his godson, please look after him for us. Orochimaru set out to capture Sakura and Sasuke in order to ensure the boy's safety. Minato, Kushina, I will not allow your son to be used as a sacrifice for this dishonest village. Orochimaru was so hurried that he failed to notice Naruto's bright red hair turning bone white, then dark blood red as the curse mark appeared to vanish and dark red spots started to appear on his cheeks and around his eye. How's your chakra doing? Sasuke asked, looking at Sakura by his side while massaging his now healed ribs. About 10 minutes had passed since they had left Naruto to contain the overwhelming Sannin, and they were both concerned for the safety of the redheads. Sakura frowned and closed her eyes. Her body was still a little numb from the Biju chakra infusion she received from Naruto. Despite the fact that she had mostly recovered from the physical harm, she would not be able to use the gates without being unconscious, since she would not be able to use the Kyuubi's chakra, 40%, and I won't be able to use the gates. How about you? Sasuke grimaced and said, I'm at 30%. That last attack was supposed to finish him off. They were not prepared to battle the snake Sannin. The most powerful attack he currently possessed was the one he used most recently, the Enten. Kagetsuchi Major. Ryu Supercondensed the Amaterasu. Illuminating heaven. Flames to the point where they essentially solidified, enabling them to burn through anything in their path almost instantly. Sasuke had to use ninja wire as a guide for the flames because he lacked sufficient control over Amaterasu's black flames to use them freely. And it almost did Sasuke-kun. Sakura and Sasuke both froze, their eyes widening in horror as their heads slowly turned with his long sword dripping blood. The snake Sannin emerged from the canopy slowly. Sakura said, "NN Naruto," as tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Orochimaru shook his head and laughed. Orochimaru smiled before brandishing the Kusanagi and charging forward. It's not quite what you think. As I said, I'm just here to test you. Naruto-kun is about 30 yards from here, safe from the black flames. Your teammate truly impressed me. Can you both do the same? Orochimaru said. Enten. Kagetsuchi Madoru. Tsurugi, Blaze Release. Added tools of the Earth Lord model. Sword. Sasuke mentally cursed as he formed a half-tiger seal with his left hand in his right hand. Black fire condensed into a double-edged sword at the same time. He could simply use a hand seal to control Amaterasu's fire, and uttering the name made the technique more potent. Sasuke scurried forward to meet the Sannin's blade, wincing as he felt his already low chakra drop by an additional 5%. G-O-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. The sound of something crashing through the trees sounded, and 3 heads turned at the inhuman roar. When Naruto's new form was revealed, everyone's eyes widened. He has blood-red hair, 6 thick dark red whisker marks, and marks over one eye that resemble the Kyuubi's. 2. His other eye was a pale blue Rinnegan that was unfocused and lifeless, while the eye with the mark on it was a dark blue Rinnegan. The usual orange of his partial transformation was replaced by 2 blood-red tails with black tips that swayed behind him. The bloodthirsty grin and the insane expression in his eyes, however, were what stood out most about the normally upbeat redhead. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He was able to see Naruto's typical chakra with his Sharingan, but there was also an odd green chakra that was gradually expanding. With his arm pulled back, the changed Naruto leapt to the ground with yet another roar of craziness. The ground where the 3 shinobi were standing was completely crushed, sending dust everywhere, so they all fled to the trees. Sasuke yelled, "What did you do to Naruto?" To the Snake Sannin. Orochimaru could tell by the shocked expression on his face that the Snake Sannin was also taken aback by this. Orochimaru's eyes widened after briefly narrowing. Orochimaru shouted at Sasuke, "I will explain later. For now we must incapacitate your teammate before he can cause any more damage." Before continuing in an attempt to restrain Naruto, he summoned a giant snake by biting his thumb and smearing blood over a tattoo on his arm. Sasuke narrowed his eyes and jumped next to the Snake Sannin, asking, "What do you mean?" "I can't explain the specifics right now, but in essence his body can't handle the energy he is taking in and is causing him to go berserk." Naruto charged at the tree the two were on, tearing right through the summon as Naruto crashed into the tree like a freight train, sending it crashing to the ground. They both leapt off. It was somewhat surreal when Sakura landed next to the two. "Can you do anything about it?" They had previously stated that, as far as they knew, missing Nin was the reason why their teammate had gone berserk, and they were working with an S-class missing Nin to try to calm him down. Orochimaru sighed, "I'm not sure. If we can hold him down for long enough I should be able to remove the chakra that's causing problems, but if either of you gets hit by him you would die." Sasuke turned to Orochimaru and said, "That chakra you're talking about, is it that green chakra?" As Naruto emerged from the dust cloud created by the tree's collapse, the Snake Sannin gave him a nod. When the redhead stopped, he screamed, grabbed his head, and screwed his eyes shut. His smile grew wide, and he appeared to be about to charge. Naruto asked, surveying his surroundings, "Where am I?" Though the forest was far less dense than the Forest of Death, he seemed to be in a clearing in the forest. But after a brief moment of scanning his surroundings, Naruto knew exactly where he was. When Kakashi was late, Team 7 would frequently have to go there to pick him up the Memorial Stone of Konoha. "Why did you have to die, To-san, Ka-san?" Naruto turned his head upon hearing a faint murmur and saw a young boy with long black hair and pale skin standing in front of the Memorial Stone. The boy appeared to be quite depressed. Naruto attempted to put his hand on the boy's shoulder in an attempt to console him, but his hand simply phased through. Incredulous, Naruto took a step back and examined the rest of his body. Since he was unable to interact with anything solid, he appeared to be in some sort of ethereal form. In addition, he observed that he was hovering around 1 inch off the ground. "I wonder if being a ghost feels like this." The pale boy and Naruto heard footsteps behind them. Both of them turned to see an old woman with brown eyes and bright red hair in 2 buns on either side of her head on the pale boy's shoulder. The woman placed her hand. "I can sense that you are troubled, young one. What ails you?" The pale boy appeared to straighten slightly after the woman finished speaking, suggesting that she was a significant figure. "It's nothing, Mito-sama." Naruto's gaze expanded. The first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi was Uzumaki Mito. Given that the first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi seemed to be in her late 70s, whatever he was seeing must have occurred nearly 50 years ago. Mito smiled like a grandmother and said, "Come now, Orochimaru-kun, you can tell me. I promise I won't tell Hiruzen-kun." Naruto's gaze grew even wider. Was that a pale boy Orochimaru? However, they did share a lot of similarities. It's just that To-san and Ka-san died for this village, and the only thing that they get is their name on a rock? That's the only lasting legacy they leave in this world? It just feels so small, so fragile, said the younger Orochimaru, who appeared to be struggling with something before he sighed and his shoulders slumped. Orochimaru was pulled into an embrace by Mito as she put her arms around him. The pale boy's choked sobs revealed to Naruto that he was in tears. Orochimaru-kun, your parents didn't die for nothing. Do you know the reason why my husband founded this village? The child nodded with a smile. The elderly Uzumaki touched the head of the future Snake Sanin. Back before there were villages, the elemental nations were in a state of constant war. Children would be sent out to battlefields and fathers would have to bury their own sons. Even those without any talent for the shinobi arts in a clan would be trained and sent out to die. My husband created this village so that those things wouldn't have to happen anymore. He created this village so that the parents would be able to pass on their ideals and values to the younger generation. Rather than having to bury them in graves, he wanted to create a place where children could be children. That is the legacy of your parents, and the legacy of any shinobi that dies in the line of duty, a place where the young may be young, if only for a little while. As a third tail emerged from behind him, the insane Naruto slowly withdrew his hands from his head while grinning bloodily once more unconsciously. The two Konoha genin retreated a step. Naruto was the only person they had ever seen go up to two tails. When Orochimaru saw this, he rubbed blood over his tattoo that called forth two snakes, which then picked up the genin. Wah! Orochimaru brandished the kusanagi and said, "Let me handle this. The two of you go put out the inferno of black flame before it burns the whole forest down." After Sakura and Sasuke nodded, the snakes they were riding fled in the direction of the flaming building. As dozens of snakes sprang from his sleeve in Naruto's direction, the snake Sanin uttered the words, "Senatajashu." As he leapt forward and started tearing through the snakes, arms, legs, and tails swinging, the boy's smile seemed to get even bigger. He appeared to be completely unaffected by the paralyzing poison, and any cuts or stray bites healed almost immediately. Naruto was pinned to a tree behind him after a blade pierced his shoulder from the approaching swarm of snakes with his hand outstretched. Orochimaru lunged forward, attempting to seize Naruto and drain his natural energy. The insane Naruto just leapt back and tore the blade from his shoulder. Only the flesh and ligaments beneath Naruto's shoulder held his arm together after the blade sliced straight through his shoulder, exposing ripped flesh and chipped bone. The bone and flesh started to steam and seemed to knit itself together, causing the snake Sanin to wince uncontrollably together. Naruto's innate healing ability and the Kyuubi's chakra were now able to quickly heal what should have been a fatal wound. With his head thrown back and his three tails pointing in the direction of his mouth, Naruto howled. Chakras that were red, blue, and green started to combine to form a green orb that was completely black. Orochimaru recognized the method instantly and proceeded to bite his thumb through the hand seals. Goorahhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh A demonic gate about 3 times as tall as a person and 2 people wide rose from the ground, and a pitch-black, green glowball the size of a volleyball shot forward with a loud explosion. They both collided, scattering enough dust to obliterate vision. After a brief period of silence, Naruto abruptly threw his arms in a cross guard as Orochimaru emerged from the dust and punched, his eye markings becoming more noticeable. Naruto flew backwards with a sickening crunching sound as the snake Sanin's fist struck the boy's arms. With his tongue extending and wrapping around Naruto's ankle, Orochimaru leapt after the boy, flinging him to the ground at the Sanin's feet. Orochimaru lowered himself, kicking an axe with one leg up before Naruto was also dragged along by Orochimaru's tongue still encircling his ankle. One of Naruto's tails appeared to elongate and swat the snake Sanin out of the air like a fly pulled by his ankle. Naruto flew in the direction of the snake Sanin. However, a bone-crushing kick struck his jaw, breaking it and sending him crashing into a toppling tree. With his bloodthirsty grin still intact and his jaw already healed, Naruto emerged from the dust cloud from the fallen tree as the boy appeared to be an unstoppable force. Orochimaru swore in his mind the boy's distorted version appeared to have an unfathomable healing factor in addition to the increased speed, strength, and perception that Sage Mode gave him. Orochimaru held the kusanagi in front of the boy as chakra gathered in his hand to form a sword. The 3-tailed chakra cloak and Naruto's twisted Sage Mode simply made him too powerful. The snake Sanin's only option at this point was to simply restrain the boy until he regained self-control in order to avoid killing him. The mindscape of Naruto. What in the hell is this? Exclaimed Naruto as he used the Kabikirabocho to cut through another blob that had a vague human-like shape. Naruto woke up from the strange vision to find Kyuubi in the human-shaped Kyuubi, encircled by a strange golden aura, protecting him from a swarm of green, human-shaped blobs. The two women were tearing through the blobs with inhuman efficiency. Hundreds of them were destroyed by a single swipe from one of the Kyuubi's tails, and Kyuubi appeared to be managing to keep up with the Kyuubi in numbers through almost inhuman swordplay. Nevertheless, it appeared that the green blobs were growing more quickly than they were eliminating them. The Kyuubi yelled over from where she was fighting. They started showing up after the snake marked you. I would have tried to figure out what happened, but the seal warped and these things began appearing. Naruto, what do these things chakra network look like? When Kyuubi said, they don't have any. They're basically massive blobs of green chakra, Naruto yelled back. Green chakra, could it be? The Kyuubi yelled as she leapt away from a huge clump of green blobs. Naruto, Kyuubi-san, cover me for a moment. Kyuubi and Naruto both ran over, with Naruto calling forth his Susanoo. The Kyuubi closed her eyes and focused on the chakra coursing through Naruto's body. She couldn't help but curse when she discovered the issue. Because of the enzymes in the curse mark that Orochimaru gave him, Naruto's body was absorbing the natural energy of his surroundings at ridiculous rates. On the other hand, if someone's nature chakra was out of balance, they would typically become stone cold, but whoever those enzymes belonged to, and who had incorporated them into Naruto's body as a result of the Kyuubi's chakra and the ridiculous Uzumaki natural regeneration, appeared to have a body that could tolerate an imbalance of natural energy and passively absorb it as well. It appears that Naruto's body's raging natural chakra was what they were battling. The Kyuubi started removing as many of the green blobs as she could while mentally cursing once more. Their only hope at the moment was for someone to take Naruto's energy and knock him out. Sure, kill Hitasu, Orochimaru swore as the insane Naruto charged up another Bijudama, tailed beast ball. This one much bigger and more potent than the previous one. The snake Sannin smeared blood on his thumb and got ready to call forth the Rashomon once more. Enten. Kurahoshi Ryusei, Black Star Meteor, Blaze Release. The boy who had been charging up a Bijudama was struck in the back by a black flame arrow that exploded, destabilizing the Bijudama and causing it to explode as well. The snake Sannin's eyes widened. The explosion did not surprise the Sannin. The Sannin was taken aback that he hadn't detected the arrow until it had struck. Something would need to be traveling nearly as quickly as sound in order to totally evade a Sage Mode user's natural senses. Orochimaru refocused and leapt into the dust cloud, swiftly approaching Naruto and putting his hand on the boy's chest to absorb the boy's innate energy. The Sannin exhaled in relief as Naruto's hair returned to its original bright red color, his facial markings, aside from the whisker lines that faded but persisted, and his tails vanished. A sigh of relief was released by Kyuubi, Naruto, and the Kyuubi as the green, human-like blobs they had been battling started to fade. Sakura and Sasuke both left the canopy a short while later. Sasuke possessed a black bow that was curved and had red accents. 3. That appeared to fade and turn into flame. Sasuke frowned and said, "All right, now that we've calmed down, Naruto, could you tell us what in the hell that was?" The outlaw Sannin grinned and said, I think I'll keep that to myself for now, Sasuke-kun." He then got up and started to leave. Sakura exclaimed, "Wait!" with a hint of frustration at the Sannin's apparent lack of desire to fight. "Why did you come here in the first place?" she asked. Orochimaru said, "Like I said, I came here to test you, but I suppose I'll extend the same offer to you that I did Naruto-kun. When you see both sides of the leaf, come and find me," before vanishing in a whirlpool of leaves, leaving behind an earth scroll. After exchanging glances, Sasuke placed one arm beneath Naruto's shoulder and raised him up, and Sakura picked up the scroll the Sannin had left behind.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.